Welcome to LTMB Live, everybody. This is Let the Madness Begin. As always, I am Will Gaillard.
And I'm Mike White.
What's going on, everybody? We're back. It's been 5 long days. A lot of stuff has been popping off.
Oh, a lot of stuff been popping off,
yeah,
man.
We got a lot to say about different topics. We got the Bernie Sanders town hall that took place last night.
Obviously, it would be a travesty if we didn't talk about it.
Exactly. I want to welcome everybody to the show. We are broadcasting live on YouTube and Periscope and Twitch. So what's up, everybody? I'm glad to be here. Hope you had a good weekend. And like I said, we have lots to talk about. I could get into just a little update from a few shows that we've talked about this in North Carolina. North Carolina's 9th district. The Republican that was leading in the race by over 900 votes, Mark Harris, today announced that he will not seek the office going forward. He is not going to run again for that office. So that is news. He has professed his innocence for a long time, said he had nothing to do with the corruption, with those
the ballots being taken.
Errors.
The ballot errors.
Yeah.
That's a real passive way of saying the ballots were stolen.
Exactly.
But I think it matters not whether he knew or not, which I don't believe. It doesn't matter because the election was most likely affected. Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether he knew or not. Yeah. So
it was done for him.
It was done for him. He can't deny that. No. So and I think it would have looked really, really bad if he would have ran again.
He shouldn't have been able to anyway, but of course, it was his prerogative to do so or not. But it's a good thing that he's not going to run. So I don't know who is going to take his place. The Democrat is going to run again, presumably. That's Dan McCready. I think he has a good shot of winning now.
Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be any kind of legal trouble Harris is going to have to deal with, because in the proceedings that I've been following, his own damn son is pretty much testifying against him. His own damn son and his one of his stepchildren, I think one of his stepchildren is testifying against him, saying that there were some things going on within the campaign that you should look at, and it's a felony. And Harris apparently ignored them.
So sad. So sad. Have nothing but sympathy for the guy. Nothing but sympathy, man.
I totally believe you. Bro.
All right, so let's get to the show, because we have a lot to talk about, and we definitely want to talk about that CNN town hall. So anyway, Senator Bernie Sanders has been making noise ever since he has announced his candidacy for president in 2020. In about 24 hours, the Sanders campaign raised just over $6 million in about 24 hours. And in less than a week after announcing, Sanders raised $10 million for his campaign. And that comes from over 350,000 total donors. So I know corporate media outlets are refraining from being honest and telling the truth to their audience. But we have no qualms with that here. So I'll go ahead and say it. Again, Bernie Sanders is the front runner.
Of course.
He's the front runner.
I think he has more push this time than he has last time.
Yeah.
I think I read a report or an article that was citing a report that highlighted that 33, it could have been 33 or 38% of the donations came from new emails. Right. I can't remember the percent. It was in the 30s. I can't remember the exact percent.
I think it was 34%, something like that. Yeah. Which that's outstanding. It's outstanding, because what that suggests is that not only does he have the large following that he had in 2016, but it's even growing, coming into 2020. So that's good.
He's accumulating more support.
Right.
I wonder why.
Can't be about his policies. So on Monday night, Bernie Sanders was at a town hall in Washington, D.C., and it was broadcast by CNN. So it was about an hour long. Lots of things were addressed. We have a few different clips that we want to play for you, and then we want to break it down. The first clip is Bernie Sanders talking about universal health care.
The United States, shamefully, is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people. We've got 30 million people today without any health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments, and we pay the highest prices in the world by far for prescription drugs. So, issue number one, I believe that health care is a human right, not a privilege, and we've got to guarantee health care to all of our people as a right. Number two, if we're going to do that in a cost-effective way, if we're going to make sure that we are not spending huge amounts of money, and in fact, lower the amount of money we're spending. We're now spending almost twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other country. That is unsustainable. The estimates is that in the next 10 years, we're going to spend $50 trillion on healthcare. The only way to provide healthcare to all people in a cost-effective way is a Medicare for all single-payer program.
About half of Americans, as you know, they're insured by their employer plans. According to a recent Gallup poll, 70% of these people with private health insurance, their plans, they like their plans. They think their plans are good. Will these people be able to keep their health insurance plans, their private plans, through their employers if there is a Medicare for all program that you endorse?
What will change in their plans is the color of their card. So instead of having a Blue Cross Blue Shield card, instead of having a United Health Insurance card, they're going to have a Medicare card. That Medicare card will allow them to go to any doctor that they want. If they're going to the doctor, they're happy. Any hospital they want. But you know what else? They're not going to be paying any private insurance premiums. If they are seniors, we are going to expand Medicare benefits to cover dental care, which is not covered for seniors, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. There will be comprehensive health care. People can go to any doctor, dentist, or hospital they want.
So if they like their health insurance plan, they won't be able to keep their health insurance plan?
Well, this business of liking your health insurance plan, which, by the way, employers change every single year. People like their doctors. They like the hospitals. They like the care they're getting. Our bill, in fact, right now, if you are in a particular program, you may not be able to go to the doctor that you want. Our program will allow you freedom of choice.
But if they wanted additional private health insurance beyond Medicare for all, would they be allowed to purchase that kind of health insurance?
Our bill covers all health care needs, all. If people want cosmetic surgery, for example, yes, of course they can get private insurance. But our bill covers all comprehensive health care needs.
I think this is, of course, this is Bernie Sanders' wheelhouse, talking about universal health care, single payer, Medicare for all. I think this is Bernie Sanders at some of his best. I love the part towards the end where he dispels the myth, the fallacy, that this notion that people love their health care coverage, right? No, they don't. And he just said it. They love their doctors. They can keep their doctors because they're not going anywhere. What they want is coverage that they can depend on. They want coverage that their doctor is going to be able to take. That's what they're interested in. Employer plans change all the time. A lot of times they change from year to year to year. Mm-hmm. And employees like, okay, well, what's my premium this year? All right, what am I getting? I'm getting the same coverage? Oh, it's going to be a little bit cheaper? Okay, that's great. Okay. But the plan name, the company that is providing the coverage matters not.
I'm glad that Bernie Sanders went into talking about MFA right after the initial question was surrounding Trump and why he needed to be defeated. Uh-huh. And it focused on policy and not because Trump is a big fat meanie. So I think it was important for Bernie Sanders to go into MFA because Donald Trump promised better health care and didn't deliver.
At all.
At all.
He withdrew health care. He didn't add anything to it.
He withdrew health care. And I don't think people understand, like, how cost effective MFA would be compared to the current system we have. The private healthcare industry, most of their cost comes from overhead. You don't have to pay CEOs.
That's right.
You don't have to pay all this overhead and paying intermediaries.
Right.
You know,
It's unnecessary.
to act between the customer and healthcare providers. So all of that cost, which Bernie Sanders highlighted, will be completely eliminated. And I thought it was interesting that Wolf Blitzer brought up, you know, will people be able to keep their employer health plan? I'm like, dog, it's called Medicare for all.
Right.
Like,
For
why wouldn't it apply
everyone.
for people who have jobs where their jobs provide health care? Now, you would think somebody like Wolf Blitzer, who's kind of always highlighted his allegiance to big business and corporate interest, would love the fact that this will take businesses off the hook, because most companies pay a portion of that. So you would think somebody like Will Blitzer would be like, yeah, that's going to help these businesses. It's going to free up some of that, that capital, right? You know what I'm saying? So him bringing that up is kind of interesting, as if it's going to hurt businesses when at the end of the day it will help businesses.
It's a bunch of lies being told about Medicare for all. And another common one is that when you compare it to different countries, those are smaller countries. It won't actually help here. I mean, we have a bigger economy. We have more people. There's no way it can help. But Bernie Sanders talked about the per capita numbers. That's what you really need to look at. What are we paying for healthcare per capita? And it's the most in the world, I believe he said.
And what's our rank? We're ranked in 31st or something?
In terms of quality of
Quality.
healthcare?
It's in the top 30s or
It's
something?
it's not great.
So that's a more accurate way of assessing how good our healthcare system is.
And we're paying tremendous cost for it. So why don't we do something about it? Anyway, all right. So the next clip that we wanted to get into was Bernie Sanders talking about higher education and about his plan, which we've heard about since 2015, 2016, about providing higher education for everyone at public colleges and universities, tuition free. So this is him addressing that.
We live in a competitive global economy. And if this economy in the United States is going to work, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. 30 or 40 years ago, we actually did. We no longer do have the best educated workforce. And you indicated the reason why. Right now, you got hundreds of thousands of bright young people who cannot afford to go to college. We have young people like you who do go to college and they leave school $50,000, $100,000 in debt. I will never forget, in Burlington, Vermont, talking to a young physician, and she said, Bernie, I graduated medical school, $300,000 in debt. Saw a dentist in Iowa, $400,000 in debt. Frankly, that is crazy. We want you to get the best education you can without having to pay off outrageous levels of debt for decades. So what is the answer? The answer, in fact, is to understand that a higher education today is the equivalent of what a high school education was 40 or 50 years ago. And that means we make public colleges and universities tuition free, and we substantially lower the outrageous levels of student debt. Right now, you have young people carrying debt with interest rates of 6%, 7%, 8%, and that is nuts. And then Wolf is going to ask me in 3 minutes, how are we going to pay for that? Yes, Wolf?
Go ahead.
All right. And we're going to pay for that by a tax on Wall Street speculation. That's how we do it. And if we can give $1 trillion in tax breaks to people who don't need it, we can make public colleges and universities tuition free all over this country. And that is a very high priority for me.
Again, that's in Bernie Sanders' wheelhouse, talking about higher education, why we need to do it, how we're going to do it. I just have a few comments about it. Well, we've heard that where the money's going to come from before. He said a tax on Wall Street speculation. Whether or not you agree or even believe in it I don't even think it's the point. Because there are some criticisms or there's some questions about will it actually gather the amount of money necessary to actually fund something like this idea, like tuition-free public colleges and universities. I don't care. And I've said this once, I've said this many times before, because what we need to do in this country, if we actually want to promote a more robust economy, if we want to actually invest in entrepreneurship, jobs, all of this, we have to invest in our youth, who will be students, who will be workers. If we do that, the product that is returned is only going to make our economy stronger. So if you think about it as an investment, it doesn't matter. It's an investment. I don't care about spending money while we have a debt. You have to spend it in the right places so that we can bring that debt down. That's all I really care about.
And also he mentioned the ridiculous level of debt that people come out of college with.
Exactly.
Like, what kind of situation does that create when people get out of college and people trying to start their lives? What kind of hindrance does that create?
Like
we talked about this. Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah. So, I mean, what type of hindrances does that create, though? You know what I'm saying? Because I think we talked about that a couple of shows ago.
Right.
People are less likely to invest in their own entrepreneurial activities. People are less likely to start families, buy houses. So that does indeed affect the economy when these people are strapped down with this enormous amount of debt with interest attached.
Yep.
And I do like how Bernie Sanders kind of got ahead of the game, because he knew what Wolf Blitzer was going to ask.
He knew it was going to come.
You knew it was going to come, and he knew it was going to come, and he still asked the question after Bernie Sanders completed his answer. Yeah. And it's a typical response. Mm-hmm. That's not just a response that Wolf Blitzer has, but it's that, well, what if the wealthy dodge those taxes?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What if the wealthy, hide their money? What will you do then? And I'm just like, I'm like, man, the government doesn't let you get from under a speeding ticket, doesn't let you get from under paying your property taxes, back taxes, unpaid, whatever, speeding tickets, everything. Student loans as well. They don't let you get from under that. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure the same government can come up with some kind of regulation that prevents or penalizes the wealthy from dodging taxes.
True.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think whether or not the proper, tax revenue controls can be applied with like Medicare for all or with free tuition, that is going to be the sticking point.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny, that question is always asked of Democratic candidates, Democratic politicians who are interested in spending money to actually represent people, to actually improve outcomes of, the majority of people in the middle class, or people, that are poor, below the poverty line. But that question is never asked of Republicans. It really isn't. But Republicans don't really propose spending. They propose cutting stuff. But in essence, when you cut stuff, especially when you cut taxes for the rich, what does that do, though? That reduces the revenue that is coming into the federal government. So what is that going to do? That's going to decrease. It's going to decrease how much money is coming in, but it's going to increase the debt. And so to rectify that issue, then they propose cutting different programs, entitlement spending, stuff like that. The whole, the student loan game that is being played on us, think about it. Pretty much anybody can get a student loan. At least one. At least one. Maybe if you've had one before, you may not be able to get one again if you defaulted on it or something like that, depending on the amount. But pretty much everyone can get a student loan. Mm-hmm. Can everyone get a business loan? Can everyone get a business loan? So this country will allow you to rack up thousands and thousands of dollars in debt to fund your education. But they won't let you get a business loan so that you can actually make something of yourself. Because especially if you have that student loan, you think they're gonna put money on top of that? Oh yeah, we gave you thousands of dollars for a student loan. Let's
use more money to start your business or whatever.
Nah. All right, so the third clip that we wanted to play is Senator Bernie Sanders was asked the question about socialism versus capitalism. This was interesting.
Senator Sanders, can you make a simple, persuasive case as to why socialism is preferable to capitalism?
Democratic socialism, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let me tell you what I mean by that so we're clear. We don't have guarantees regarding economic rights. And way back in 1944, in a little known, a little publicized State of the Union speech, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said something, and I'm paraphrasing him, but he said, you know, when we talk about human freedom and rights, we've got to understand that everybody needs a decent paying job, that people need health care, that people need education. And all over the world, these ideas are taking place. You go to countries in Scandinavia, of course, health care is a right. Higher education is free. They have strong preschool programs. They make sure that their elderly folks can retire in dignity. These are not radical ideas. So what democratic socialism means to me is having in a civilized society the understanding that we can make sure that all of our people live in security and in dignity. Healthcare is a human right. All people should have healthcare. You can't get ahead in this country, in this world, unless you have a decent education. We have got to, as a right, end the kinds of discrimination, the racism and the sexism and the homophobia that exist. So to me, when I talk about democratic socialism, what I talk about are human rights and economic rights.
You know, to be completely honest about the system that Bernie Sanders is promoting, it's more of a social democracy. It's not really socialism. It's not true, full-fledged socialism. Wanting people that create the actual wealth, which is the labor class, to have a bigger portion of the profits within a capitalistic system is not socialism. Basically, Bernie just wants capitalism that's just nicer to people. You know what I'm saying? He wants to implement some sort of like forced trickle down type of economic model. Right. Because the wealth hasn't trickled down as the ruling and billionaire class has promised. So all Bernie Sanders is doing is just trying to force them to honor that talking point that never came to fruition.
I agree. Look, we've heard his idea about democratic socialism before. The problem I had with the premise of this question was that the questioner was framing it as that socialism was going to be replacing capitalism, in which Bernie Sanders has never stated that. I've said this before, okay? There's not a politician that is running for president or that is really that's in Congress right now. You can include Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you can include Bernie Sanders, all of them. None of them are actually promoting socialism, like you said. They're promoting capitalism, but capitalism where
social safety
nets, like these programs that actually help people get out of the situation that they're in, that like help people live in dignity, provide the basic necessities for them, right? Not just for them, but for everybody in this country. So that still runs on capitalism. So the thing that Bernie Sanders does not state, though, which I kind of wish that he would, and I wish he would say that, no, it's not something that is going to be replacing capitalism. We do this within the system of capitalism. That might sound irritating for some that do not like capitalism.
But that's what it is. But that's what it is.
But that's what it is. I mean, so I wish he would actually state that.
I haven't heard Bernie Sanders promote a system that calls for nationalizing the means of production for all industry and placing that output, that capital, in the hands of the laborers.
Right.
I have not heard him, call for a system like that. So he's really not calling for full socialism.
No.
Outright socialism.
No, he's not. Not at all. All right. So we have one more clip that we wanted to get to. I think that's all we had to say. Oh yeah, and then the I know you saw the graphic, the CNN graphic, which
boo dog.
Where the CNN graphic said, what did it say here? I think I have it written down here. Can you make a simple, persuasive case why socialism is preferable to capitalism? And again, that's just a false narrative. That's just leading with just a fallacy. Again, Bernie Sanders is not promoting socialism. He is trying to operate within the parameters of capitalism, but just trying to, like you said, provide social safety nets for people, to provide health care for all people, to make sure people can live with some semblance of dignity.
That was, they did that quite a lot, where they summed up someone's question on screen, and how they summarized the question was like,
man, it was like, get out of here, man.
Kind of like the when the woman asked about her Democratic Party bona fides,
Right.
and how him running as a Democrat kind of suggested it was kind of disingenuous because he talks about himself as independent.
Right.
And so it was like a 3-tiered question, but it surrounded how effective he could be as a Democrat and whether people will trust him as a Democrat. And CNN decided to summarize that question as, do you think you'll get a fair shake in the Democratic nomination process given your history as an independent? That was the question they put on screen, summarizing this woman's 3-part question. I was like, is that really why he didn't get a fair shake during the primaries? Because he was an independent? Is that really why
I don't think so.
The motive behind him not getting a fair shake?
I don't think so. That's not something that we ever talked about. It was many other things besides him being a member of Congress as an independent. Nah, I don't think that was quite it. It was something that they chose to hit him on, but was the reason why they were hitting on him simply because he was an independent? No. That was just a tactic that they were using. So it went deeper than that.
So was that little money laundering scheme that the DNC pulled in favor of Hillary Clinton, did that have anything to do with his kind of independent status? Was that?
I don't think so. And remember, he could have done the same thing.
Yes. And he chose not to because he knew where a lot of that money was coming from and would have been kind of contradictory to his entire platform.
Yep. All right, so let's get to the last clip. And so in this clip, Bernie Sanders fields a question about reparations and if he supports them.
Part of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow in the U.S. is the legacy of income inequality in the U.S. What is your position on reparations to the descendants of slaves?
Well, as I just indicated, there are massive disparities that must be addressed. There is legislation that I like, introduced by Congressman Jim Clyburn. It's called the 10-20-30 legislation, which focuses federal resources in a very significant way on distressed communities, communities that have high levels of poverty. So as I've just indicated, I think we have to do everything that we can to end institutional racism in this country. It is not acceptable to me that the rate of childhood poverty among the African American community is over 30% in this country. That is beyond belief. That African Americans die from cancer at higher rates than whites. So we're going to do everything we can to put resources into distressed communities and improve lives for those people who have been hurt from the legacy of slavery.
So what is your position specifically on reparations? I asked the question because Elizabeth Warren, Julian Castro, they've indicated they want
what does that mean? What do they mean? I'm not sure that anyone's very clear. What I've just said is that I think we must do everything that we can to address the massive level of disparity that exists in this country.
I'll tell you what they mean, because Elizabeth Warren has said black families have had a much steeper hill to climb. We need systematic structural changes to address that. Julian Castro has said, I have long thought that this country would be better off if we did find a way to do that, reparations.
Well, I agree with what Elizabeth said.
So you would support reparations?
But read what she said. What does that mean? She means, I think, I don't want to put words into her mouth, is what I said. Okay? In other words, as a result of the legacy of slavery, you have massive levels of inequality. It has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed now.
So this conversation is always deep, and it can get controversial. Many people have different ideas about it. I'm glad Bernie Sanders is talking about reparations and what it means to him. Sanders specifically cited Jim Clyburn's bill called 10-20-30. And it calls for investments to be made in poverty-stricken communities, which is something specific. He actually addressed something that's tangible that you can go look at. Other candidates have not been as specific. So if we go down the list, presidential candidate and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Julian Castro told The Root just recently that he supports the idea of reparations, though he doesn't know what that idea actually looks like. Senator Elizabeth Warren supports reparations for Black Americans and Native Americans. She has not been specific about what that actually looks like as well. Senator Kamala Harris recently came out in support of reparations, and she said in a statement, quote, "We have to be honest that people in this country do not start from the same place or have access to the same opportunities. I'm serious about taking an approach that would change policies and structures and make real investments in Black communities." But I believe she points to her LIFT Act as something that indicates her support for reparations, and that LIFT Act is not about reparations. It's not race specific whatsoever. The only presidential candidate that has been specific about their idea, what their plan is about reparations, is Marianne Williamson, and she has called for billions of dollars to go towards the investments in the Black community, in Black Americans. So again, going back to Bernie Sanders, there's two things that I got to say about what he actually said. He needs to stop running away from the term reparations. I understand what he's trying to say. And again, he did point to something specific. But by him not actually welcoming the term reparation allows others to characterize him as being somewhat soft on race relations or race issues. Like it's not comfortable for him to talk about it. All he actually has to say is that, yes, I support reparations, and this is what I mean by that. So if he's clear that what his ideology is that, yes, he supports repairing what happened with slavery, like the evil institution of slavery, if he supports repairing that issue, doing something about it, even the aftermath after slavery, if he supports doing something about it, then he supports reparations. I don't want somebody that's going to pay me lip service, but the way he went on about it and try to explain it was very clumsy. Just go into it, say, yes, I support reparations, and this is what I mean by it. Now, the second thing I have to say is that him being specific about his idea of reparations, the Jim Clyburn's bill is not reparations. It doesn't look anything like reparations. Again, it does call for investments in poverty-stricken communities. And this was an article that was written about it back in 2016. And the formula is pretty simple. At least 10% of a federal program's funds should go to counties where 20% of the population has lived below the poverty line for 30 years. Now, if you actually look at who are living in these communities, most of them are white people. And most of them live in Republican territories as well. Either their congressperson or their senator is a Republican. So a lot of these people are white people. Now, I have no problem with the bill. I have no problem with addressing poverty in all areas. We should do that in totality. We should address poverty all across the United States of America. But if you're having a conversation about reparations, that's a totally different conversation. Again, if you support the idea of reparations, make that case and make it clear and concise so that you can actually sell that. Like, we live in a world of sound bites. His running on about it and kind of clumsily explaining it, that's not going to sell. A short soundbite like, yes, I support reparations and this is what I mean by that, that is what would sell to the American people. Just be clear about it. But if you're talking about reparations, you're going to have to go to a different area than Clyburn's bill, because that is not anything like reparations.
Hopefully he was just using Clyburn's bill as a reference point.
It could be.
Hopefully he was just using it as a reference point to kind of illustrate how he would implement reparations, right, or how I guess he defines as reparations. But your main point is, sounds like you're saying that he could have said the same thing. Mm-hmm. He could have given an overview of his demographically targeted programs and said, I support reparations. Basically, exactly, take ownership of the word, mm-hmm, and say, this is what I mean by reparation. Now, why do you think Wolf Blitzer why do you think he asked Bernie Sanders to kind of compare, like, I guess his stance on reparations with Elizabeth Warren and Julian Castro, even though they didn't really have a detailed plan themselves?
Why?
Why I don't understand why he asked that question to even though according to what they have said themselves, it's not really detailed. All they have done, whether it be Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, or Julian Castro, was kind of give an overview of sentiments that have always been expressed in regard to like some sort of targeted change, a targeted change directed at a certain demographic to kind of reverse some of the, I guess, the oppression that was felt by that group of people for a long time. Like, that's all they really did.
Yeah. It's very simple. Those three that you mentioned, they didn't run away from the word. They clearly said, yes, I support reparations. But like you said, they were not specific whatsoever. Bernie Sanders, even though he was much more specific than them, he didn't actually he didn't welcome that word. And that's not going to play well. Just say that this is my idea. I support reparations and this is my idea. Now, again, if you are real about your support of reparations and doing something specifically to redress what happened in the evil institution of slavery and the ugly aftermath, that preceded it, but that followed it, you're going to have to go to a place that is actually race specific. And again, even though anybody could support this initiative by Clyburn in addressing poverty-stricken communities, anybody could support that. That's not reparations. You know who did support Clyburn's bill?
Who?
Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton supported it in 2016. You know who else did? Paul Ryan.
So what are you trying to say here? Judging from the individuals who supported it, that should kind of tell you how much teeth it really has?
Yeah. Well, just in the case of actual reparations, if we're gonna talk about actually addressing poverty-stricken communities,
that's one thing.
Then we can talk about that bill all day long, and we might get behind it, no doubt. I haven't read it front to back, and everything that has to do with it. I have a general understanding of what it is, and it's not reparations. So again, in the conversation of reparations,
we know who the topic is. It's talking about DOS.
Yes,
it's talking about DOS.
So, but that's my only criticism. That's my main criticism of this town hall. Again, it seems like he does support the idea of reparations. He just needs to be clear about what that actually looks like.
Okay. You're talking about what it looks like in practice. Now, what does it look like, not just in practice, but in implementation, and how will that affect the world around us? If that is something that is actually a legitimate and sought after plan or program nationally, how is that going to look? And will it mean anything? Because that's what I've been grappling with personally. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously, who is going to want to just push back on $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 or however much it is? Because I think there's 40 million black people roughly.
I'm not sure.
And of course the ages are all over the place. If there was some sort of blank check written, I wouldn't say a blank check, but $100,000, that's I don't know, 4 trillion. How is that gonna look? What kind of effect will that have? That's kind of as a black person and a progressive and someone who is kind of trying to see the bigger picture in all this, what does it really mean? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You see what I'm saying? What will reparations actually do? What will it mean in the long run? Because a superpower like the United States is not going to do anything to jeopardize its kind of superpower status. So, if reparations were ever issued, I think the most likely motive would be very malevolent, in my opinion. Because why would they be doing it in the first place? Is it going to change the balance of power? You know what I'm saying? Isn't that the point? Yeah. Will it change the balance of power? That's my only question. You see what I'm saying? What will the global climate still look like, and what will it be? Will overexploited countries still be enslaved by multinational corporations? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if that's the case, what will reparations do at the end of the day? You know, I just don't think we can buy our way out of this capitalist imperialism. That's why I'm really not so sure about diving deep into this kind of pro-reparation stance, because what does it mean at the end of the day? I just don't think the revolution will be won through capitalism and through the disenfranchised receiving like this quasi-capitalist or quasi-capital. I call it quasi-capital because like it's not real capital because it's not derived from like owning the means of production. You know what I'm saying? And until I don't want reparations. I want like repowerations. Right. That's what I want. I want repowerations. Until I can get repowerations, I think the conversation about reparations is a bit superficial.
See, and there was another question that Bernie Sanders fielded, and it was about black people too, and it had many layers to it. But in Bernie Sanders' response, he did talk to the corruption within our economy, but how that plays itself out, like in terms of white wealth and income in comparison to black wealth and income. And so I believe that was the first time that I made him like actually make that point very clear and say that like there is racial disparity within wealth and income between the races. And so that we do have to do something about that. Again, if you're stating that, then you're actually talking about repairing the situation that happened years and years and years earlier after slavery, right? So I'm totally with him. I think he does understand that, yes, this is repairing the situation, or even, or at least attempting to repair the situation. This is reparations. Just use the word. Just use the word.
Are you talking about the question he received from the black policy analyst?
Yes.
Yeah, we didn't want to play that clip.
Yeah, it's a long clip.
Because it's a long clip, and we would definitely have to provide context to the clip by adding in the response, so it would have been too long. But I had to copy the question down because of how ridiculous I thought the question was and kind of what it speculated, what it inferred about Bernie Sanders that I thought was completely false. And the question that Bernie Sanders received from that policy analyst was, there's a deep sense of mistrust for you by some within the African American community. Many feel that you undermined Secretary Clinton after the nomination by not showing enough support, which contributed to Trump being elected. Now, I ain't gonna deal with the Trump being elected part because I'm not gonna rehash that bullshit because that's just an argument that's been floating around for a long time. But let's just say for the sake of argument that Bernie didn't cheerlead for Hillary Clinton hard enough. Even if that's true, what special connection does Hillary Clinton have with black people to the point where they write anyone off that didn't, ride or die for Hillary Clinton? You see what I'm saying? Because the mistrust, this policy analyst pointed out, was based on the idea that Bernie Sanders didn't support Hillary Clinton enough.
Is that true?
That's not true. But I'm saying for sake of argument, let's just say that's true.
Okay.
Like, where is this special connection? Like, at? Like, where is the special connection that Hillary Clinton specifically and especially has with black people? Where is the, some sort of something I can point to, something tangible? Something tangible.
Tangible? I got you. I got you.
Like a track record or a history or something.
Well, I got a history.
Like she's been invited to all the cookouts. You know what I'm saying? She's been invited to all the cookouts, you know what I'm saying?
It's old Billy, man. It's old Billy Clinton, man. She has that connection. Of course, she is the wife of Bill Clinton, who the black community warmed up to for some reason. I think it was superficial. It really wasn't. It really had no deep meaning, I don't believe, because you can't really point to anything to where he was like an ally of the black community.
That's again, other than that kind of saxophone playing jig, I'm trying to say, okay, what made Hillary Clinton I guess so broadly loved?
Yeah.
Or that perception that she is so broadly loved. Because I just think it's a perception. Right. Because if it wasn't, say she ran as an independent, do you think she'd have the support? of all these black people?
No.
So I'm trying to say, that's why I think the question is a bit disingenuous, because it promotes, I know, because it promotes this idea that somehow Hillary Clinton has like this special connection, a special tie to the black community that Bernie Sanders does not have. Something else that I didn't like about the question as well is he says that the mistrust is partially due to him and his identity. You know what I'm saying? Virtue of his background. I was like, what is that supposed to mean? I'm like, what was Hillary Clinton's background? But I am glad Bernie Sanders brought up the fact that a higher percentage, in response to that question, brought up the fact that a higher percentage of Clinton voters casted a ballot for John McCain than the percentage of Bernie Sanders voters that casted a ballot for Donald Trump. I'm glad he brought that up as a follow-up.
That was quick on his feet.
Because according to the logic that kind of the question presented, wouldn't that mean that Hillary Clinton should receive that same level of distrust from the black community? Wouldn't that, you know what I'm saying?
The Hillary bros or something?
Hillary bros.
Hillary bros?
Didn't ride for Obama hard enough. You know what I'm saying? But she didn't get that kind of
she didn't, man.
Backlash.
And
Obama was black.
Many times, voters do have this unconditional support of these establishment candidates, man. These establishment politicians and people that are actually trying to change the game up, not actually trying to continue the status quo, actually trying to represent people. Man, they got to jump through hoops just to get your support, man, even though they are actually trying to be there for you. But anyway, that's all we're going to say about the CNN town hall. We have some other stories that we want to get to. We'll leave it there.
Surprised we got through that so fast, man.
Exactly.
Because there was so much meat on that bone.
There was a lot. We could go on probably for the whole rest of the show if we wanted to, but we have some other things. Just to adjust the chat, we see a lot of trolls in here, a lot of people making some comment that are actually sending people out of the stream. I believe there was one. Who was the one who recommended it that we get some
moderators?
Yeah, some moderators.
The thing about moderators is like we have to kind of
hand out some blue wrenches.
Yeah, we might do that because here's the thing. Like I guess wasn't on Twitter. Somebody highlighted certain comments in the chat and how we were letting it go on. But if any one of you has ever been a part of a live show environment and doing one yourself, if you are, giving your own commentary as well as running clips, it's really hard to pay attention to the chat, and there's really no way to constantly scroll back and up to see what people are commenting. Right. So the only opportunity we have to moderate the chat is when we play the clips for y'all, which we have been trying to do this show.
But like I said, we've already blocked some messages, blocked some people so that they won't be able to comment anymore. Like I said, we see the hateful comments and not supportive of that at all. So if any of you are listening, take your shit somewhere else, straight up.
I don't know why they coming up in here, dog.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, we're going to do our best to try to block that out, and we are going to try to get at least a moderator or two or something like that to help us out. If you are viewing the show every single Tuesday and Thursday, if you're committed to be here, then definitely we can definitely do that. So anyway, let's move on. All right, we're going to stay with Bernie Sanders. Okay, so Democratic Senator and presidential candidate Bernie Sanders is being called out for hypocrisy. A Political article is highlighting the fact that Bernie Sanders criticized the fossil fuel industry in his campaign launch video, but in 2016 made use of private planes to travel across the country to support Hillary Clinton.
Bernie used the planes?
He was using planes, man.
Bernie's used the planes.
Not just any planes, too. Private planes. So the article states that Sanders has continued to use private planes and has spent over $300,000 in approximately 2 years since. So this is Politico trying to make the argument that Bernie Sanders should face criticism for the hypocrisy, and this will in effect be a challenge for his candidacy in 2020.
Now,
it's a lot of bullshit.
Where is all this chatter coming from, though? That's the important kind of question I have for you. Where is this chatter coming from?
Look,
I mean, the shadow's coming from this shadow's coming from a lot of directions, but
there's
this
a lot
particular
of things going on in this article.
The particular article you're citing,
right? The political article. I think. Look, it starts out with Politico's narrative. Like, yeah, this is a problem, Bernie. This is hypocritical, Bernie. It's going to be a challenge for you, and then it points in another direction to actually make its case. So where does it make its case? It points to former Hillary Clinton staffers to make its case. So in the Political article, it referenced some of these former Clinton staffers who had all kinds of criticism for Bernie Sanders. One of them referred to Bernie Sanders as Royal Majesty King Bernie Sanders. That's the actual quote, right? This was because while volunteers were braving the cold to knock on doors for Hillary Clinton, this one former staffer feels like Sanders was demanding private planes to join the fight. So this narrative was rejected by Sanders staffers and former staffers as well. So Sanders spokesperson Ariana Jones said it was impossible to travel all the events without chartered flights.
So who was that on behalf of? You mentioned that again.
That was on behalf
of
Hillary
who?
Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So she also said that's why chartered flights were used to make sure Senator Sanders could get to as many locations as quickly as possible in the effort to help the Democratic ticket defeat Donald Trump. Senator Sanders campaigned so aggressively for Secretary Clinton at such a grueling pace, it became a story unto itself, setting the model for how a former opponent can support a nominee in a general election. So if we get to another former Bernie Sanders staffer, Renaya Beatrice, she was the Sanders deputy campaign manager. And she rejected the notion that private planes were used or were requested just because. And so what she had to say was the request for a charter only came after the schedules were put in front of us. If a less rigorous schedule were put in front of us, we wouldn't have needed a charter, and that would have been fine for everyone involved, including Bernie.
So basically, he did not control the schedule. Whoa.
He didn't control the schedule, therefore he didn't control where he was going to have to head to, and if it was going to be difficult for him to actually make the destination on a commercial flight, then of course you're going to have to charter a plane to get him there. To fight for you, Hillary Clinton. I'm with her, right? This was all for Hillary Clinton to support her candidacy.
So kind of like the expenses for all these trips were funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
So why did Hillary Clinton pay his airfare? Essentially, not Hillary Clinton, but Hillary Clinton's campaign. So it's her.
They felt it was necessary.
You mean they certainly wanted her or wanted his support?
Yes,
is that
they
what
did.
you're saying?
Yes, they did. Yes,
okay.
They wanted his support.
But by them trying to castigate him for this, I guess they wanted him to stay home.
Well, it's after the fact, and Hillary Clinton lost. So,
but guess what? What if he did?
What if he did?
What if he did not elect to go on these like post-primary Hillary cheerleading trips via gas guzzling jets?
Yeah.
What would they have said? Well, they would have said what they're currently saying.
Yes, they would.
Because what are they currently saying? Or what have they been saying since she lost?
That is his fault.
That's his fault, and he didn't try hard enough after she won the Democratic nomination.
So nothing would have changed, actually.
So nothing would have changed.
Yeah. Well, there's another former staffer who had something to say about this, a former Bernie Sanders staffer, and his name is Michael Briggs. He was the 2016 campaign spokesperson. And so he did not mince words while speaking about this. And so he said, "You can see why she's one of the most disliked politicians in America. She's not nice. Her people are not nice. Sanders busted his tail to fly all over the country to talk about why it made sense to elect Hillary Clinton, and the thanks that we get is this kind of petty, stupid sniping a couple years after the fact." He then added, "It doesn't make me feel good to feel this way, but they're some of the biggest assholes in American politics."
Damn. Tell us how you really feel.
Didn't hold punches.
But you know what? This creates a very interesting contradiction. Mm-hmm. I think you know where I'm going with this.
The contradiction to the contradiction?
it's like racks on racks of contradictions. But like, how can they claim that Bernie didn't help Hillary enough after she won the Democratic nomination while simultaneously castigating him for all the trips he took on her behalf? Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can't say he didn't do enough to promote her as the Democratic nominee, while at the same time saying, hey, he sure did go overboard on these little jet trips on her behalf.
On her behalf. Nobody else's behalf. On her behalf. Like, this whole conversation is idiotic anyway. Like, even if you throw out the Hillary Clinton's, the former staffers, the supporters, even if you throw that, the conversation is idiotic. Because you're talking about one man's effort. You're talking about one man using a private plane to go different places. Like, when we're talking about climate change, when we're talking about doing something drastically to reform the energy, the infrastructure in this nation, we're not talking about on an individual level. We're talking about on a nationwide level, something that would take a hands-on approach from the government, not just one individual. Like, if you want to, if somebody wants to, recycle, if somebody wants to not board a plane because it uses so much fossil fuels, if somebody doesn't want to have a gas guzzler type of truck or a car, cool. But if you do, you know how much, if you don't do those things, you know how much of a dent you're making, like how much of a positive effect you're making on the environment? Not much whatsoever. It's not even going to register at all. We need transformative change. We don't need individual approaches. No, we need to reform the technology, the infrastructure. We need it in totality if we're actually going to do something. So this whole narrative is a falsehood. Bernie Sanders, I don't care how many flights Bernie Sanders took, his actions alone didn't do anything. Not on the larger scheme of things.
Well, but how they expect him to get around to all these cities in such a short amount of time?
Exactly.
He doesn't like.
How does she get around?
And that's to me, that is where this kind of criticism has no sticking point. Mm-hmm. Because Bernie Sanders is not the only politician highlighting climate change.
Right. So remarkably, this narrative of Senator Bernie Sanders being a hypocrite on climate change is very similar to one that we saw on Fox News when Tucker Carlson had Adam Green on his show to discuss this. So we have a clip of that, but we'd like to show you.
If you say you believe that carbon emissions are destroying the planet and making it impossible for people to live here and people shouldn't have kids because this threat is so imminent and so profound, how could you possibly ever, under any circumstances, fly in a private aircraft?
Yeah, Tucker, I've seen you make enough good arguments to not really think that you think that's a very strong one.
Now, you know the numbers on carbon emissions per passenger, private versus commercial. There's almost nothing you can do short of starting a tire fire to cause a bigger carbon footprint than to fly private. You guys don't believe a word you say. You want to take over the U.S. economy so you can control it.
Over 2 years,
you don't believe it's an imminent crisis.
Tucker, between 2017 and 2018, there was one 9-day spurt where Bernie Sanders went on a 9-day tour and took a private jet, and for the rest of the 2 years, he went commercial. So this is not a real issue. You don't believe this.
But why would he ever do it at all? How many houses does he have?
But he has, I don't know, how many does he have? He has one in Burlington. Okay, so what's your point?
3. Okay, so
what's your point?
My point is that if you believe that carbon emissions are destroying the Earth, that's too many houses, that's too much consumption, that's too much carbon. You lead by example. Why is it the people who are trying to control my life and tell me what I can do and can't do and how many kids I can have don't bother to restrain themselves? It's really simple.
So he should walk to work. Should he walk from Vermont to D.C.?
Yes.
Should he walk from Vermont to D.C.?
Live by the standards.
You just said yes. He should walk from Vermont to D.C. That shows the BS argument that you just described.
Yo. Tucker Carlson's face looks like he is in the middle of, like, I guess, pushing a turd out of his butt. Like, at all times. It looks like he's in the middle of doing that. honestly,
You would have to make those faces. To
you would
come up
have
with
to
these explanations.
you would have to now, because maybe he is pushing out shit, literally and figuratively. I think it's time that we maybe show some sympathy towards Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Because he's not really having a good week. I still don't think Tucker has recovered from that beatdown he received from Rutger Bregman
Yes.
a week ago. And so he might be still suffering from some sort of PTSD or PTBD, post-traumatic Bregman disorder. So he is on a very sensitive emotional seesaw.
Yeah.
So I think I want to send my condolences to his mind right now, because it doesn't seem to be operating on an even keel. But his argument about Bernie Sanders, like, using jets while still promoting, his climate change, initiatives and platforms, his argument would be good if there was a more efficient and viable means of transportation available for Bernie Sanders, like, I don't know, like a high-speed rail, high-speed train. If there was something else available for Bernie Sanders, and then Bernie Sanders didn't use it,
chose to keep using fossil
fuels,
technology,
it would make sense. The suggestion he has is that Bernie should walk.
from Vermont to
from
DC.
Vermont to DC. But again, not just from Vermont to DC, everywhere.
Yes.
Like if his suggestion wasn't ridiculous, then we could take him seriously. But there's no way any politician or anyone of his stature can get around the country via walking. Like, what's next? What's next? Advising his entire campaign to use those long stretch bicycles. All his entire campaign to get around the country, or stretch golf carts. Like what's the alternative? Skateboards. Like, what's the alternative? Like, Bernie Sanders does not control the means of production of devices and ways of transportation, such as airplanes and cars. He does not control that. Bernie Sanders would be a hypocrite if he did control that.
Yeah. So
You know what I'm saying? If he did control that, if he did like have some sort of car company or aviation company or whatever, and they use fossil fuels and they design products and planes and transportation devices, transportation machines to get around and use fossil fuels, yes, that would make him a hypocrite.
But see, that's why, like, when you talk about this on an individual level, it makes no sense, because Bernie Sanders' actions are not doing anything that anybody else's individual actions are doing. I know Tucker Carlson is trying to frame that as like, you should do the right thing because you're the one that is actually supporting this narrative. Like, you're the one that actually wants to do something about climate change. Like, you be the leader. You can't be, like you said, the infrastructure is not in place for Bernie Sanders to do anything different. You have to use what is here. Now, we can advocate for a transformative change, and that's what he's doing. That's what but we have to have the infrastructure in place to actually make the changes that I guess Tucker Carlson wants us to see. He points to how many houses does Bernie Sanders has here. Three houses. That's too many houses. Carbon emissions,
dog.
Yo, look. If Bernie Sanders only had one house, I guess that would be okay for Tucker Carlson. But the fact that he has, and I don't even know if he has 3 houses. Let's say he does.
One of the houses I think he actually inherited, too.
Okay, but whatever the case, even if he has 5 houses, I don't care. If Bernie Sanders didn't own those houses, would somebody else? Would somebody else own those houses?
Those houses wouldn't exist, Will, if Bernie didn't own them.
They wouldn't exist. And is the house the problem, or the technology that is used in the house? Because it probably operates off of fossil fuel technology, right? So to do something about that, we have to do something about that as a country.
So what you're saying is Tucker Carlson was actually making a case for us to transition into a more renewable energy sources. Yeah, it does. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I suspect he still hasn't gotten over that beatdown, because he was just throwing out all kinds of stuff. He was just throwing out all kinds of stuff, take over the economy.
You say you guys want to.
You guys just want to take over the economy. Like, he did say something else. I don't think it was shown in that clip, but he says, it's just about power. This is about power. You want to take over the economy. And I was just like...
You know what that kind of suggests to me, though? If Tucker Carlson is framing this as, like, if we actually do something to address climate change, if we actually go about and change our infrastructure, actually engage in reforming this whole society, this whole nation, to where we are actually using renewable forms of energy, that would mean that the Democrats have all the power and are taking over. So what's the state of affairs right now then? Wouldn't Tucker Carlson be admitting that the Republicans have all the power and they have control? They have taken over? I don't think he knew what he was admitting.
Of course he doesn't know.
You
what
guys
he was
just want the
suggesting.
power. So you have.
He's projection. He's projection. He's projecting. That's what he's doing. He's projecting. And he's also he wants to be able to have all the kids he wants without people telling him what to do in his life.
Criticize me.
Don't criticize me and what I do in my life. I'm like, yo, dog, how did this become about Tucker Carlson and what he personally does and how many kids he has? How did this become about, people trying to control his life down to that level? Again, that's projection, because that's what his side tries to do, especially dealing with like same-sex marriage, abortion, transgender, bathrooms, all these different issues. They're the ones who are trying to control people's lives down to that like minute, those minute issues.
That's why this is not about individuals. Tucker Carlson, he's like, Bernie Sanders, no, since you believe in it, you do something. Don't make me do it and you're not doing it. It's not about you or Bernie Sanders or this individual over here or that individual over there. It's about us collectively, and we have to do something collectively to reform this nation.
But see, that's actually like, this is actually not a new kind of argument. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen this kind of, methodology applied to a lot of different issues. I've seen people on the right apply this to homelessness. Right. They'll say something like, I guess you want to address homelessness? Let them stay in your house. You want to address refugees and immigration? Let them stay in your house. You want nonviolent criminals freed? Let them stay in your house. Like, I've seen them like go about it that way, not realizing that, like, wait a second, I can kind of I can apply that to everything that you advocate for too. Mm-hmm. I could be like, you want less regulation? Well, let the most polluting industry move into your backyard. You want to eradicate ISIS? Well, go fight them yourself. You don't want no abortions? Well, why don't you take care of them kids? You see what I'm saying? I can easily reverse that argument. That's why it makes no sense.
It doesn't. All right. All right. Let's go on to AOC. All right. So, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the freshman Democrat from New York's 14th Congressional District, ran her campaign advocating for transformative change. She billed herself as someone who would have the moral courage to actually represent her constituents rather than corporate interests. Recently, she revealed the Green New Deal resolution in the House, and on Friday, she announced that no one working in her office will earn less than $52,000 a year. So in a tweet, she said, "Leadership starts with our choices. That's why I decided that no one on my staff will make less than $52,000 a year. It's likely one of the highest entry-level salaries on the Hill. We pinch pennies elsewhere, but it's worth every dime to pay a living wage." And on the Hill, it says Ocasio-Cortez's communications director, Corbin Trent, told the outlet that salaries for the Congresswoman's office would top out at $80,000, well below the $154,634 median wage, according to a Legistorm analysis of congressional chiefs of staffs.
I mean, I'm trying to find something wrong with this.
Yeah.
I'm really trying hard to find something wrong with this. But I can't. I really can't. But, I mean, who would have a problem with this?
Well,
she's trying to, kind of provide a living wage for people on her
Right.
staff. They're working for her and for essentially for the United States of America as well. Why not provide them with a better wage to make their, their jobs less stressful and their situations less stressful, right? I mean,
Just like you, I have the same opinion. Someone like me, I can get behind this decision. It shows me that she's willing to walk the walk, that the things that she was talking about in her campaign have followed her into office. So she's willing to actually step up. She's actually willing to display her moral courage to do the right thing and actually represent the people that she represents, of course. So you have to keep in mind where this is at, okay? She lives in Washington, D.C. Her staffers are going to live in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C.
has one of the highest cost of living in the United States.
Cost of living is extreme in Washington, D.C. Now, these positions, like these lower level positions that she's talking about paying $52,000 a year for, it's standard practice for them to be receiving about $30,000 a year, maybe $32,000 a year, something like that. That's not a living wage in Washington, D.C. So I have no problem with her actually, she has the authority to make these decisions. So again, I have no problem with it. She's advocated for paying living wages for corporations all across the United States. So in her office, she's going to do the same thing. I have no problem with it. But there was pushback, okay? And so she responded on Twitter to that. And she said, it's pretty sad that people think that low congressional staff pay is a good thing. Low pay, a big reason why money in politics is a problem. You can make a lot more money becoming a lobbyist and setting up a relationship with one, since the actual job doesn't pay enough. Domino effect. See, I love where she took it there too, because again, like, if you're not making what you need to make, are you going to sell out? A lot of people will, just so that they can bring in the money. A lot of people do that, especially in Washington, D.C. They can hook up with the lobbyists. They can look up with the firm. And all they have to do is sell out. That's all they have to do. So why not actually pay people a living wage so that you don't contribute to the problem with money in politics in Washington? Why not do that?
I think it actually kind of goes beyond that. I think it includes that, but I think there's a bigger picture that casts a shadow over the issue of, I guess, having a living wage in this situation. What do people normally do when their primary job doesn't provide enough income to make ends meet? Well, what do they normally do?
Say that again?
What do people normally do when their primary job does not provide enough income to make ends meet?
They're gonna have to find some kind of other income.
Exactly.
Supplemental income.
Supplemental income, and that's what some White House staffers find themselves doing now. How much more productive will they be if they don't have to get a second job?
If they only have to rely on the one job, I think that will improve their work and their time off.
Now, I do think it's
to engage with their family and friends.
I do think it's important that we mention that there's a lot of staffers, a large portion of staffers that don't struggle and don't have to get second jobs because they come from a privileged background and their income is supplemented by mommy and daddy or a wealthy spouse.
And that's what allows them to take these inferior type of salaries.
See, so you see where I'm going, right? So what does this incentivize? People from, I guess, lower economic backgrounds applying for these positions.
Oh, you're talking about AOC's decision.
AOC's decision.
Yes, regular people actually holding these positions.
Regular positions, regular people actually holding these positions.
Right, no doubt. I totally agree with that. So again, this is our stance. Of course, it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's stance. It's many people's stances, but not everybody. Not everybody. So on Fox News, they chose to compare what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing to socialism and communism. So we have a clip for you that we want to show you.
Get a load of this, right? A tweet went out yesterday. She said leadership begins at home or whatever, however she put it. And she's basically announcing that she is going to redistribute the money appropriated to her congressional office to make sure that the entry-level staffers get a fair share of money. Now, let me show you the numbers here, right? She puts this out. She wants $52,000 for the entry-level staff salary for anyone in her office. Here's the problem. You've got to find a way to get money to pay the entry-level people, so she plans to take that from the chief of staff.
It's beautiful.
Senior staffers who would normally make $80,000 or normally make $154,000 for the chief of staff, probably only going to make about $80,000.
Every Capitol Hill office has a limited amount of money to pay their staff, right? So you have to decide how to allocate it. She said everyone in my office will pay a living wage. So I'm going to pay $15 an hour, which means your entry-level intern is making $52,000, while your chief of staff, who is a very important role in a congressional office, now is capped at $80,000. As opposed to the actual market rate at Capitol Hill, which is closer to $150,000. Right. So everyone's between 52 and 80. It's actually socialism and communism on display.
Yeah. Wait. Both socialism and communism.
On display at the same time.
Both socialism and communism. I'm pretty sure there's some room in there for some other isms.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, he is right in one thing. Every Congress person gets the same amount of money.
Right.
Now, they can allocate that money any way they see fit.
Right.
And that's what she's doing. Now, if her team of senior staffers is okay with taking a pay cut, I don't see the big deal. And you think that she didn't inform potential staff members that she was going to bring on board that they might take a pay cut? There's already been statements made by people on her staff that say, yeah, I mean, that's what we have to do. We are on board with her. We were on board with this decision. You know, she went over it with us and we still came on board. So if they're fine with it, then I don't see why the people on Fox News who are most likely making millions themselves have a problem with it.
No. It's an interesting word that we heard there at the beginning. Redistribute. This is a freshman congresswoman. She hasn't been in office before. She's not redistributing a damn thing. She just got into office. These are new staffers. They haven't taken any pay in her office ever. So these are new positions. If she can pay them, again, we talked about how it's her decision, all right? She has the authority to control what these staffers are going to make. If they're not comfortable with it, then they don't have to work for her.
They don't have to work for her.
But it's not redistributing anything. They are getting money through Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's office for the very first time. Nobody's moving around anything. And then another thing about the communism. Okay, so this is communism because... No, hold on. First of all, it's not communism because everybody's not making the same damn thing, right? Everybody's not making the same thing. Now, the lower people, I guess the very low people in their office, the lower level positions, they're going to be, I guess the level is going to be 52,000. They can't go lower than that. But it's going to cap out at 80,000. Again, everybody's not making the same thing. But it got me to thinking, right? Wouldn't our government be a communist government? What about everybody that earns the minimum wage? Isn't that the same damn thing? Everybody earns the minimum wage. There's many, many minimum wage jobs across the United States of America. Aren't they working under some communist type of government practices? Couldn't you say?
A communalist? Some shit like that.
I mean, that makes as much sense as what they were talking about. Actually, I think it makes more sense.
You know, if you think about the distribution of work as it comes to, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or any of her senior staffers, and the work that they have to do and how much stress that that job, puts on them, think about how much less stress they're going to have when you have staffers that are able to do their jobs without going to a second job.
Yeah. And like you said, it allows people that don't come from privileged background to actually be a part of the government, to have a voice in actual government legislation, just working for the government.
Maybe that's the underlying reason to why some of these people on Fox News don't like this move, because they know what it will ultimately lead to.
And they are advocating for the very wealthy, obviously.
Obviously, because see, these kind of low-paying intern positions kind of promote people of privilege getting a glimpse into the inside, and not people that actually need to see what's going on inside, and probably going to have the opportunity to gain experience and know
it
how.
vaults them to where they want to go, so that they will one day.
But see,
maybe they will one day be a congresswoman or a congressman.
Yeah, but see, if people from certain economic backgrounds, get into those positions, who will they most likely advocate for? It's not guaranteed, because there's a lot of people who sell out who come from low economic backgrounds, but
it's a good chance.
But the probability is just a little high. You know what I'm saying?
Now we wanted to play one more clip from the same segment, and in this segment, it is Katie Pavlik who is doing the talking. Just try to stay with her, okay? Just try to stay with her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with her moving the money around in her office, but let's not forget where that money comes from. They're not making that money in her office. They're not running a business where they're making a profit and money is coming in with revenue to pay for people's salaries. That money comes from taxpayers and is given to her office, and she can move it around. If it was market-based, maybe she could pay entry-level staffers $54,000 a year, given the market value of those positions in the private sector. But
she'd have to have
in
a
the
profit
government,
motive.
there would have to be a profit motive. There would have to be some business insight behind it. But let's not forget where that money is actually coming from.
I'm told
they're not making that
members
money.
of Congress, she makes $174,000 as a congresswoman. She should probably redistribute some of that. Will you share some of that money, Miss Congresswoman, with the rest of your staff who's not making as much as you?
Yo, again, right before I told you, try to stay with her, right? Now, let's just break this down really simple. I tried to stay with her. I tried to follow her, the many points that she made. It was pretty difficult to do so. So, Katie Pavlik, she began by saying, quote, "I'm fine with her moving money around in her office, but let's not forget where that money comes from." Okay, so cool. She's cool with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez doing whatever the hell she wants to do with the money, allocating it to this person or this person, whatever she wants to pay out. She's cool with that. But then she makes the case that it's not cool. And it's not cool because of where the money comes from. So it comes from taxpayers. So it would be okay if it came from revenue. If we're talking about, like, what she say, if this was market-based. In a market-based situation, Ocasio-Cortez could decide how she values the work, but since it's taxpayer money, she can't do that. Who is deciding how to assess the value of a position? Isn't that on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? This is her office. She's not redistributing anything. If these staffers do not like to pay, if they have worked on the Hill before and they're accustomed to a certain salary and they don't like what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is selling, then they can move on. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is valuing the work at this amount, this amount, this amount. That's her prerogative. This narrative is, oh my gosh.
But everyone gets the same amount of money to work with, though.
They get the same amount of money.
They get the same amount of money.
They are in charge
and they're
of divvying it up the way they see fit.
It's
on her to put the value on those positions.
But see, I still don't follow the logic. Like, so she's saying that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can't assess the value of work because she is she works for the government?
Yeah, because this is not revenue.
That makes no sense. It doesn't matter how the money is generated, whether it's through revenue, whether it's through government funding, which it is. This is government funding. Yeah. So I don't understand, like, her position. Like, why? Like, that's not a real good reason to disagree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's actions. It's like this woman is literally mad because some people are getting paid more.
Right.
That's
what it boils down to. And then at the end,
wait a second. Wait a second. Did she realize what she was advocating for? This is another coming to the right conclusion for the wrong reason kind of moment, just like Tucker Carlson did. Tucker Carlson didn't realize in the previous story we did, he didn't realize he was actually calling for a focus on climate change. She didn't realize she was calling for private industries that have the capital to pay their employees more.
Yep.
That's exactly what she was doing.
That's what she was doing.
Because she's saying it would be okay.
It would be okay.
She was saying it would be okay if this was some sort of market-based, profit-driven industry.
But since it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Since it's not a market-based situation, you can't do it. So again, who puts the value on the work? Whoever is given access to the funds, right? That's who puts the value on the work. So you're mad at her because she's saying that, these lower level positions? No, there's no way I'm paying them $30,000, $32,000. They are going to get a living wage. And you have something negative to say about that? Oh, we see what corner you're in.
He said the corner of the wealthy class and the wealthy class only, and doing everything that they can to align themselves with that mentality. Don't pay these people.
Don't pay.
Just give them crumbs.
All right. Let's go on to the White House, I believe. Yeah. Okay. There are a couple of bills that are expected to pass the House of Representatives addressing gun control. Both proposals would finally implement universal background checks, something that is widely supported. However, on Monday, the White House issued a statement threatening to veto the legislation because it violates the Second Amendment. So this is from that statement that the White House issued. The extensive regulation required by H.R. 8 is incompatible with the Second Amendment's guarantee of an individual's right to keep arms. By overly extending the minimum time that a licensed entity is required to wait for background check results, H.R. 1112 would unduly impose burdensome delays on individuals seeking to purchase a firearm. So,
Go ahead.
I wanna highlight the word burdensome just for a minute, okay?
That's exactly the word that stands out to me too.
It would unduly impose burdensome delays on individuals seeking to purchase a firearm. Burdensome. You know what I find burdensome?
Here we go.
You know what I find burdensome?
Here we go.
I find it burdensome that families have to deal with mass shootings.
Yes, I know you're
I really find it burdensome that the people that, quote, aren't supposed to have firearms get access to firearms and start shooting at people, innocent people.
Oh, so you're saying like death is burdensome.
Death is very burdensome.
Death is very burdensome.
Like when you want to do a comparison of death and wait times, I'd rather wait than die.
But isn't it?
I'd rather wait than die.
Isn't it very interesting that Republicans / conservatives are more concerned with the burden of people just waiting to get a firearm,
right,
than they are concerned with the burden of refugees, the burden of not being sure about your immigrant status, the burden of being racially profiled, the burden of being unfairly treated by the criminal justice system. All these burdens, right? All these actual burdens that really affect people's lives, they don't care about.
But the Second
Amendment. No, yes. It's like they don't want to be
too much of a burden to do anything about.
Background check.
Background check and more of, because the background check would probably lead to more of a wait time, because to actually do a full background check to make sure that this individual should or should not get access to this firearm, it would take a lot more, or it'd take a little bit more time.
It's almost like they're treating having a firearm like it's a national emergency. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is it really is it really a personal emergency? No. Because they're treating it like a national emergency, kind of like how Trump is treating the wall. Like, we need it now. You know what I'm saying?
You know what a personal emergency is?
What?
Death.
Exactly.
That's a personal emergency.
Yeah.
Death. Not a wait time. A personal emergency is death. Maybe for those that are on the other side of many gun control arguments, okay? Maybe we don't agree on a national firearm registry, okay? Maybe we don't agree on that. Maybe we don't agree on mandating a safe storage place for firearms. Maybe we don't agree on banning semi-automatic weapons and banning large capacity magazines. Maybe we don't agree on all of those things, right? But we hear all the time from most people, including homosexuals, that universal background checks are, actually, forget actually the term universal background checks. We hear all the time from everybody, including homosexuals, that we need to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have them. Now, how do we actually do that without universal background checks? I'd love to hear them actually answer that question. If you don't have universal background checks, how can you actually keep the firearms out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them? Now, I'm not saying that universal background checks are an end-all be-all. I'm not saying that somebody will not violate
that's
them.
Just the first step.
Yeah, that's just the first step. And at least it will be something on the books to where if you did violate it, if you did sell a firearm to someone without that background check, there's going to be a penalty for you. That's something that we can do. It won't, again, somebody might violate it, but we at least need to have it on the books that would deter that type of action.
Right. If you apply to any law enforcement agency, whether it be the local police department,
right,
or whether you apply to be an FBI agent, even if you, I guess, apply for like a concealed carry or open carry if your state allows that, what do they do to determine whether you are qualified or capable of carrying a weapon? Like if you apply to like a police department, like what do they use to determine whether they're going to allow you to carry a firearm? What do they do?
There are many types of checks. Like there's a background check, there's a psychological check.
Have you ever,
dexterity
if you ever get a chance, just if you're curious, go online and just go to any police department, maybe your local police department website, and just go through just as a, just like kind of like a, I guess a curious activity. Check out their application process and look at all the stuff they ask you. They are trying to ascertain whether the individual that they're going to be hiring is going to, I guess, expose them to some kind of liability.
Right.
They ask all kinds of questions about this person's background. I'm talking about, like, do you have any gang members, like, in your family? Do you know any? Like, did you go to school with any? It's like, it's extensive. And just like Will stated, they do a background check. So members of law enforcement, before they are allowed to go on the street and work as police officers and carry weapons, they go through a background check. Now, why wouldn't citizens need to go through some sort of background check as well to be able to carry a firearm? I just don't get it. If we, send law enforcement personnel or individual applying for law enforcement to go through dexterity training, psychological training before they can carry a weapon, why not regular folk?
It really doesn't make sense. I don't find that it makes sense. Again, and this is the conversation this is a reasonable conversation. A reasonable conversation that I think most of us agree on. It's just that our actual representatives, they don't want to do anything about it. And we talked about this, it was several weeks ago. We actually gave Trump some credit for one particular thing. And it wasn't like some shade that we threw on top of it or anything like that. It was legitimate credit that we afforded President Donald Trump. And that was because of the bump stocks. He actually got bump stocks banned in the United States of America.
Oh man, we were like, damn.
Yes.
Clap, clap.
Good move, no shade. We didn't add anything on top of it. It was a good move. Thank you, Donald Trump, straight up. That was it.
And King Donald giveth, and King Donald taketh.
Yeah, that didn't last long. Again, to stick your neck out for certain organizations, maybe like the NRA and others, to criticize universal background checks, which is like the extreme little. I mean, like that's the minimum, the bare minimum that you can do to actually address gun crime.
It's going to burden law-abiding citizens, though, which kind of is a very oxymoronic comment. Because if you are law-abiding, then you wouldn't have to worry about a background check.
Who's it going to be
burdensome for? Do you see what I'm saying?
Who's it going to be burdensome for? Who's it going to be burdensome for?
It's going to be burdensome for people who are trying to skirt the law, which, to be honest, there will be people who will try.
No doubt.
You know, like, yeah, there are going to be people who will buy guns on the black market, but, like, this kind of approach is designed to make it harder.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't think you can prevent all gun crime.
No.
All mass shootings. I don't think you...
But that's not an excuse to do nothing.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think you can't look at any other type of crime the same way, right? So why look at this particular issue in that way?
Right. All right. Let's go to the late term. All right. Late-term abortion has been a topic of conversation as late. Late-term abortion has been a topic of conversation as of late, stemming from a recent bill in Virginia that would loosen restrictions on late-term abortion. On Monday night, Republican demagogues, my bad.
I was about to say, man, I was like,
bad.
That's not very fair and balanced.
My bad.
Will.
I don't know how that came out. Demagogues, Republicans. My bad. I meant Republican senators. Somebody must have did something.
Oh, somebody must have hacked your notes. Somebody must have hacked your laptop.
Yeah, man. My bad.
You know, kind of like they did Joanne Reed.
Yeah.
I'm
going to take the L on that, okay? Demagogues, I'm way out of bounds. All right. So, Republican senators, Republican senators tried to pass legislation that would penalize doctors who failed to, quote, exercise the proper degree of care in the case of a child who survives an abortion or attempted abortion, end quote. So the measure needed 60 votes to pass, but failed with a final vote of 53 to 44, largely because enough Democrats did not support it. So when you hear that Democrats wouldn't support something like this, it really brings about feelings of utter disgust, right? Because we're talking about doing something for newborn babies. That's what we're talking about here. Just listen to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who said this before the vote. Quote, he said, it isn't about new restrictions on abortion. It isn't about changing the options available to women. It's just about recognizing that a newborn baby is a newborn baby, period. End quote. So again, all this is about protecting life. These newborn babies that are actually born in their life is to penalize these doctors if they don't actually try to help them survive.
But what is this stemming from? What is this push stemming from?
This is stemming from that whole conversation that occurred in Virginia, in which it was a Democratic delegate, Kathy Tran, who she proposed a bill. It was introduced by her, and what it would do, okay? It tried to address where abortions can happen, where abortions can occur in the second trimester, and how many doctors it would take to determine if a woman's life or health is at risk in the third trimester. So the bill didn't do anything. The bill did not address any type of infanticide or anything like that.
The parameters surrounding when an abortion is biologically and medically necessary. Didn't do anything to change that.
Didn't do anything whatsoever to change it. She was just questioned on that aspect when she was in the House of Delegates. But it had nothing to do with the proposal whatsoever, okay? So, again, but this is still a very important subject. We're talking about protecting life, newborn babies, right? Mm-hmm. So why did the Democrats seem to be so inhumane? Like, why did they do that, right? So let's listen to the words of Senator Tim Kaine, who is a Democrat from Virginia. And he said, Congress reaffirmed that fact with its passage of the bipartisan Born Alive Infants Protection Act in 2002. I support that law, which is still in effect. There is no need for additional federal legislation on this topic.
Oh, so what that tells me is this is some sort of grandstanding to make it look like they are like altruistic protectors of valuable human life, even though that's not the case.
Yes.
And any recent change to kind of adjust when an abortion can happen just has to do with administrative protocols, because there are some cases where that number of doctors or that number of medical professionals is not available. You see what I'm saying? There might be some areas where women live where the amount of doctors needed for the approval don't exist.
Right.
That was the reason for that. Not to change the parameters behind when an abortion is necessary biologically or medically. Had nothing to do with that.
This was an opportunity. They sniffed the opportunity, Republican demagogues. They sniffed it out. They're using this issue to capitalize on it, to frame Democrats as uncaring, that are not, or actually don't care about infanticide or anything like that. They're using this opportunity to scare people and to garner votes. This conversation actually made it all the way into President Donald Trump's State of the Union address just a few weeks ago. He talked about this lie of infanticide, trying to frame these Democratic politicians as uncaring sons of bitches. They don't care about life. And they also talk about this when you're talking about the southern border, too. Yeah. You're talking about the wall. What do Democrats do, right? They don't care about crime. They don't care about human trafficking.
Rape.
They don't care about the drugs, the rape. They don't care about any of this because they don't care about life.
MS-13.
All of these are lies. And these Republican demagogues are using these lies.
That wasn't Freudian.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
But they're using these lies to keep their following, to fearmonger and to engage in demagoguery so that they will remain in power and that they will get the votes that they need to stay in power. It's a dirty trick. It's a dirty trick, but it's effective. It's bullshit, man. It's absolute bullshit. It's not about facts, too. Like, we've talked about the facts along the southern border, right? We've talked about how if you actually want to do something about drugs and human trafficking and the crime or anything like that, as it regards undocumented immigrants, a wall isn't going to do anything about that, right? This legislation that the Republicans were pushing about doing something about infanticide won't do anything because something is already on the books. So nothing that they're actually trying to do will do anything new or will improve the situation. But what they're trying to do is make you feel, they're trying to make you feel like something is not being done, like something is not being addressed, and we have the plan to do it.
And they're trying to make their constituents feel like they're doing something.
Yes.
Now, if this is all theater,
disregard the facts.
If this is all theater, what is this type of theater designed to cover up? If you were trying to, I guess, present to your constituency some sort of kind of positive initiatives that show that they are doing the good work and fighting the good fight, but it's all theater.
Yes.
Why would you need to do that?
Why?
Because most of the time they spend fighting for the rich.
Yeah, I know.
This is just all theater.
It's a ploy.
It's a ploy, man.
And again, like, think about how dirty this is. They already know something's on the books that addresses infanticide. They already know that. But if they can bring this in a proposal and have Democrats vote against it, the work is done. See, the Democratic Party is the party of infanticide. And forget the facts. It's just about how people feel. See, I feel fear, even though I live in Kansas, or I live in North Carolina, or I live in Kansas or something like that. Did I say Kansas already?
No. I don't think
Missouri, wherever. No matter where I live, like this whole problem along the southern border, I feel in fear. It's not affecting you whatsoever. Actually, it's not even affecting people that live on the border like that, because they will even tell you that we don't feel in fear. Like what we are actually in fear of is President Trump and the Republican demagogues trying to buy up our land, use eminent domain to take our land and build that wall. And that's what they're in fear of.
And it's not just the people that kind of squash the idea that there's some sort of legitimate fear on the border. It's actual data that comes from our own government and Trump's old administration that kind of gives us pause.
Yeah.
It kind of gives us a legitimate reason to kind of push back on this kind of fear rhetoric and fear propaganda promoted by Trump and his administration. So, I mean, if you just look at the data, there's actually nothing to fear.
But see, they ain't looking at the data.
Okay.
That's the most troubling aspect of this. It doesn't. The facts don't matter. The data doesn't matter. You can talk until you're tired of talking, till you're blue in the face, till you're whatever in the face, right? Doesn't matter. It's all about how these people that these Republican demagogues are speaking to. It's all about how they feel. The second time? That was the second, third time?
Well, officially third.
Officially?
First time was the mistake. The mistake.
But anyway, it's all about how they can shape fear, okay? If they can get you to feel in fear and to feel like the Democratic Party is the party of infanticide, the party of open borders, the party of crime, then they're doing their job.
It's almost like the issues that they should be addressing, I guess, as it concerns the Democratic Party, aren't the right issues. Do you see what I'm saying? It's almost like if they would actually address the actual problems with the Democratic Party, but see if they did that, they'd probably be calling out themselves too.
They would be calling themselves out.
That's the funny part about it. If they actually addressed the real issues.
Yeah.
That
We have no problem with that.
Yeah. If they address the real issues,
Yeah.
it would kind of be legitimate. But they have to stay with these stupid wedge issues that really are non-existent.
If you're familiar with our program, you understand that we have talked about the Democratic Party in a negative light many times.
But what's your point? And what's your point?
My point is that, like, we don't run away from the truth about the Democratic Party, the DNC. We don't run away from that truth. If you want to tell some truth and criticize the Democratic Party, please do so.
But it's not constructive to kind of like harp on issues that really have no basis in fact. It doesn't get us anywhere, and the Republicans are kind of doing a service to Democrats because now the Democrats can point to them and talk about how ridiculous they are and how ridiculous these accusations are and kind of feign this victimhood. And it kind of like gives them legitimacy. It automatically will give them legitimacy for almost everything that they do. I don't think like Fox and Fox News or Republicans understand that that's what they're doing, especially when they kind of focus on issues that are easily defensible.
I mean, I hope that more people are able to dismiss this narrative about infanticide and that the Democratic Party is actually supporting it. I hope people are actually able to understand what is actually going on. But you remember what happened with Planned Parenthood. The videos, the doctored videos, and how they wanted to defund Planned Parenthood because of those highly edited videos that were meant to portray that Planned Parenthood was engaging in the selling of body parts. And this is what they do, man. This is what they do. All right, we got one more story, okay? This is a funny one. This is a funny one. It's not meant to be funny. It wasn't meant to be funny. But
of course it's not. Of course it's not. Because some of these you got to prepare, man, because you're going to be laughing. You're going to have some throat issues. Because it just, as of late, it just seems as if some of these stories and some of the headlines I've been reading, they kind of remind me of titles I would see on The Onion.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, reading this, just instinctively, immediately, what? What? I digress. All right. So, all right. So let's get to it. Okay. On Thursday, Representative Andy Biggs, who's a Republican from Arizona, and Senator David Perdue, who's a Republican from Georgia, are planning to introduce companion resolutions declaring the national debt a threat to the country's national security. So the resolutions note that the total public debt has exceeded $22 trillion and total interest surpassed $192 billion for fiscal year 2019. So listen to these strong comments by these gentlemen, okay? This is a dual statement by both of them. Congress has failed to maintain a fiscally responsible budget and has typically relied on raising the debt ceiling. Both of them stated, okay? Now, Senator Perdue, in a standalone statement, he stated, ultimately, the debt impacts our ability to fund priorities like providing our men and women in uniform with the resources they need to protect Americans. This debt crisis will only get worse, and if we don't act now, our country will lose the ability to do the right thing. Representative Biggs said in a statement, If we do not change our course, we will be responsible for one of the worst catastrophes this nation has ever experienced, the crash of the American economy and the demise of a superpower. I thank Senator Perdue and my colleagues for their leadership on this issue. So again, man, I noted that there were very strong comments coming from these two gentlemen here that are trying to do the right thing for this great nation. It's a national emergency. Our debt is going to cripple this superpower, man. How could you not get along How could you not get along for the ride with this, man?
See. I'm sensing some sarcasm here. All these men are trying to do is trying to prevent the United States from going through an economic apocalypse. And you sitting here being sarcastic. Why can't you take this seriously, man?
Did you hear sarcasm?
I'm really, I don't regard your sarcasm as something that I can get up with, man, because this is a serious issue. I can't get up with this sarcasm
guys.
because these are two stand-up guys, and they're trying to present a serious issue for the American people to actually take seriously, and you over here being sarcastic, man. What is up with that, man?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Cause
I'll let the cat out of the bag, man. I'll explain why I had such a reaction to this story, okay? So again, these Republicans, this senator and this congressman, like you said, they don't want what'd you say? An economic
apocalypse.
An economic apocalypse.
They want this. They don't want a superpower to just tumble
down. Yeah, okay. So
tumble down the hill.
So we want to stay relevant. We want to do something about this debt that is, I guess it's on track to just make this nation go tumbling down. All right, we got to do something about it, right? So we've talked about one issue many times on this show. On this program, we have talked about one issue many, many times. And that issue would be the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was passed in late 2017. Okay? So that tax scam, as we refer to it as, at the time that it was passed, there were many... there was a lot of analysis about it. And I believe at the time, it was estimated that just over $1 trillion was going to be added to the debt, to the national debt over the course of 10 years. Now, some months later, the Congressional Budget Office kind of amended that expectation.
Oh, they amended it and said it wasn't going to be that severe, right? Is that's where...
No.
That's what you...
No. And instead of the instead of the 1 to 1.1 trillion dollars.
You can tell we ain't got no money. We can't even say trillion. You can tell we ain't got no money. You can't even say it.
It's not.
Your body won't even.
It's not in the vocabulary.
Your body won't even let you say it.
So instead of the 1 to 1.1 trillion dollars that it would add to the national debt, instead of that, it was going to be about $2 trillion added to the national debt. $2 trillion, right? So then, in reading this story, I got to thinking, I'm like, well, certainly these stand-up guys didn't vote for that abomination because they're all interested. They're all about this national debt and how it's going to really hamper our economy. Certainly they didn't vote for it. Certainly they didn't vote for it. They couldn't have. They're stand-up guys.
Sounds like you're building up to something. There will be no way on earth that this kind of dramatic output delivered by you doesn't have a climax and it's not leading up to something.
Oh yeah, it's leading up to something.
All right.
So
let's have it.
I went back and actually looked at the legislation from 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and at first I didn't catch it that both of them were not representatives, because I'm not too familiar with either one of them, right? So I found Representative Briggs' name, right? But I didn't find Perdue's, and I was like, damn, was he even in the Congress or something? I was like, then I saw, oh, he's a senator. I forgot he's a senator. So I looked and found the Senate roll call. I found both of their names, and guess how they voted? They voted for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is expected to add $2 trillion, approximately $2 trillion to the national debt over the course of about 10 years. By 2028, it's expected to add about $2 trillion. And going forward from that point, because we understand that
interest.
The interest and the tax cuts for the wealthy and big business, those are permanent. So going forward past the 10 years, it will keep adding on to the national
because
debt.
there's no revenue coming in or less revenue coming in. So let me get this straight. These two chaps
Yep.
voted in favor of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
The scam. Yep.
But they are pearl clutching over the debt. So they voted for this legislation that would cause the debt to rise.
Yes, significantly too.
So,
$2 trillion is significant.
So they're declaring a national security threat. They're declaring this debt.
They want to declare a national emergency because of the debt.
So does this mean that they are a threat to national security? And they are the national emergency if they voted for this bill that increased the debt that they say is so high that they have to declare a national emergency?
That's a good question. Because you know what? I think I could get behind the idea of declaring a national emergency to protect us from chaps like these.
Yes, chaps.
I think I could get behind that idea. The audacity for these two, which they helped. They helped the national debt grow.
Wait a second. Yes, they did. They voted for it. But see, now they understand how bad it is. So I'm pretty sure they're going to offer solutions as to how they'll deal with this national security threat, like the debt. I'm pretty sure they'll offer some solutions, and one of them will be to repeal the Tax Cut and Corporate Handjob Act. I'm pretty sure, because that was
I like the added word. Yeah,
what?
I like the added word that you used.
What?
I saw that.
What?
You added a few. What's that?
Did I say something?
What
did I say?
Was that a flub?
That might have been another Freudian. It's contagious. What did I say?
Just go ahead.
Will they seek to close tax loopholes for the wealthy? I mean, they could do that if they really care about revenue.
If they're seeking redress.
They're seeking redress for to deal with this national emergency. Will they seek to outlaw tax havens? I'm pretty sure they're going to do that. I'm pretty sure they're.
How about that money coming across overseas?
Oh, like
in these tax havens. Yeah, the repatriation. Yeah. Will they stop this typical practice of offering it at a discounted rate? Like, hey, bring that money back.
You know what?
At a discounted rate, and we'll just let you.
You know what I think they'll do? They'll seek to end corporate subsidies.
Oh.
Will they seek to end corporate subsidies?
No more money for the fossil fuel industry?
Find out on the next Dragon Ball Z. I feel like that's what we're about to say or some shit.
Yo,
I'm putting money on them pushing to cut Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, and other entitlements.
Yeah.
That's where I'm putting my money.
Hell yeah.
I'm going out on a very thin limb.
Because this is a national emergency.
National emergency.
Our national debt is going to cripple this fine nation, and we must do something. Those tax breaks for the rich, the uber wealthy, the corporations, we're going to let that stand. But we got to take a look at something else, right? We got to take a look at all this other stuff. Fuck out of here, man. All right, man. Got my blood pressure up a little bit. I can't believe not even did they have the nerve to think this up. They're going to propose it on Thursday.
They actually wrote this idea down.
Now, if they didn't vote for the tax scam, cool. If you didn't vote for the tax scam, I'd still look at some past decisions, but at least you wouldn't have voted for that abomination. But that you did, and we know what it's going to add to the debt, and now you want to talk about how it's going to cripple this nation?
Again, more theater, man. More theater.
Wow, man. Fuck out of here, man.
They think somehow that their footprints won't come back to haunt them. You know what I'm saying? They think their footprints don't actually leave tracks.
You know, back in the, maybe back in the 80s, the early 90s, no internet, even the mid-90s, early 2000s, maybe a lot of people weren't using the internet, couldn't research this information.
Yeah, it would
now.
definitely be hard to go find footage, previous statements, voting records. Now
man.
you have
right
finger
there. You know how long this took to
fingertips.
research? Because I already knew how they voted. They were Republicans. I already knew how they voted. You know what I'm saying? but I just had to be sure. I couldn't present you with the wrong information. I had to be certain. These bugs, man. Anyway, all right. It's that time. We would like to hear from you, okay? So if you do have a question or comment, we would love to hear from you. The number is at the bottom of the screen right now. If you do want to get in the conversation, the number is 669-900-6833. We will be glad to take your call. If you do come with some hateful-ish.
Yeah, you will be booted.
You will be booted.
Yeah.
Quite quickly, too.
Yeah.
That last show that we did, I think that came as a surprise.
Yeah.
That came as a surprise.
Yeah, these past 2 weeks, we've had an increased level of viewers, which has come with an increased level of trolls that we're not quite used to dealing with. So we'll try to do a better job at kind of moderating that. We're not going to be able to catch all of them.
True.
Because of, us doing the show and running clips and whatnot and giving commentary. So we'll try to catch that stuff, but it's not going to be foolproof, unfortunately.
You know what we can do, because I don't want to do it in the chat section. Look, anybody that, if you are committed to following along the show, if you're committed to being here every Tuesday and Thursday, we do it every Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we feel like we can trust you, all right? Give us, a right to our email account, all right? So it's letmadnessbegin@gmail.com, okay? Letmadnessbegin@gmail.com, okay? So just write to us. Include your screen name too, your profile name, so that I don't know if you're using the real name or whatever. But if you do want to become a moderator, I think that would be an easy way to us go through it, and maybe we'll pick one or two or something like that. But we definitely need that. So if you're interested, like I said, I put it in the chat too, so that anybody, if you didn't hear me, it's letmadnessbegin@gmail.com. Or you can go to the website too, and you can contact us there. There's a contact us button on our website, letthemadnessbegin.com.
When we were talking about reparations, there was someone, I forgot the person's name, but I just noticed it, and this is something that constantly gets recycled. It's the premise that states money is power. And we were that kind of premise was stated by a commenter when we were talking about reparations, and I guess that was a response to me asking the question of what good will it do in the long run, and somebody gave the answer, money is power. And I have to push back on that. I think that's kind of a sentiment that is kind of easily pushed, but I just think it's very simplistic. I don't think money is power. I don't think money is power. I think control is power. If you don't have control over anything, it doesn't matter really how much money you have.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Money does make people feel powerful.
Yeah, it makes people feel powerful.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But you actually have to activate that.
Exactly. Like I can drive around a Lamborghini that can, go 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Yeah. That's a powerful car. It costs a lot of money, but does that car actually give me some sort of tangible power? But I do think that it's interesting that everything, the terminology we connect to money always relates to energy. It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's some sort of linguistic, some sort of linguistic representation of how we view, how we spend our energy. You know what I'm saying? Think about what do we call cards that we use to make purchases? We call them charge cards. You know what I'm saying? What do we call places that we go shopping? We call them outlets. So everything when we talk about money has to do with energy. I think that's pretty damn interesting. Charge cards, outlets.
So one thing we didn't talk about, we don't have anybody on the line right now. Something that we didn't talk about was the national emergency that President Trump declared last week or the week before. Now I can't remember. I think it was the week before last week. But anyway, the House just they passed legislation to block President Trump's emergency declaration, and I don't know if I don't know if anybody really has a feeling on if it's going to pass the Senate or not. There are at least 3 senators, Republican senators, who will vote for the resolution to block the emergency national declaration. And those senators are Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Susan Collins from Maine, and Tom Tillis. Where's Tom Tillis from?
I don't know, bro.
No, North Carolina. So I believe this was I don't know if this was in an op-ed or just a written statement that Tom Tillis made yesterday, but he stated that it doesn't matter to him if he does support Donald Trump's agenda and the border wall or anything like that. It doesn't matter because this would set a precedent. And if you do have the next, it doesn't even matter when the next Democratic president is going to serve. But if it is a Senator Bernie Sanders or Senator Elizabeth Warren or anything like that, what's to stop them from declaring a state of emergency, a national emergency, and actually doing something about climate change, or setting up a single-payer healthcare system, or shutting down the banks? I think that's what he said too, something about shutting down the big banks or something like that. So he thinks it's dangerous for a president to assert their authority, especially when Congress has already made a decision. So you're calling on Congress to do their job. But then when they do their job, the president's like, well, you didn't do what I wanted you to, so I'm just going to override your decision. I don't think that's good for anybody. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah, because most likely, who's going to have control next year?
Exactly.
Judging from how his presidency has gone, I think Donald Trump has kind of benefited from him being in the category of an unknown. You know what I'm saying? I guess to get elected. You know what I'm saying? We don't really have a governing history to go on. So all people looked at was his character and his business practices, which is not enough. Nope. So he was kind of benefiting from that. Now 2 years in, he doesn't have the benefit of being an unknown. So I'm not sure, the next election cycle, man, they may lose control of the Senate, bro.
It's a chance, man. Yeah, I think it's a real good chance. And they're going to have to defend way more seats than the Democrats. In 2018, the Democrats were on the defense. And clearly they lost 2 seats. But in 2020, going to be a totally different situation. So anyway, let's leave off with that. And we do have our first caller. Let me just make sure we can hear him. Okay. All right. So it's coming from the 443 caller. This is LTMB Live. What's going on tonight?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? It's Court. How y'all doing tonight?
Man, we doing good, man.
Good to hear from you, Court, man. What you got for us tonight, man?
Well, hey, I want you guys to hit me with something. Ask me something. And let me go. Let me talk about what you guys want to talk about.
All right. Let's see. All right. Well, shoot. You know what we led off with? All right. What was your takeaway from the CNN town hall last night with Bernie Sanders?
Oh, son of a bitch. Well, unfortunately, fellas, I didn't catch Bernie Sanders' CNN town hall because I didn't need to see it because I knew he was going to say some good shit, and that was pretty much the end of it. I know that makes me a bastard because I just assumed that Bernie Sanders was going to say everything that I wanted him to say, but fuck it. We all know it's Bernie Sanders, and he's a badass, and that's the end of that discussion. I know he was talking about how you can't have any exception to health care other than a single payer, Medicare for all health plan, which I am, 100% in agreement with, and beginning to question now why, people don't allow America to, because if we're so exceptional, why don't we allow the American government to, negotiate down drug prices? Everybody's like, oh, they're going to leave, they're going to go. Where are they going to fucking go? Where are they going to go? We're the only country in the world, well, developed country in the world that does not have really some kind of healthcare system for all of its citizens. The only one. We are the only suckers in the room. And every time you ask about this, or anytime somebody AOC brings this up or Bernie Sanders brings this up, the first thing CNN wants to do is talk about, well, how you're going to pay for it. How come CNN never asks how you're going to pay for tax cuts? Why is it CNN never says, oh, you guys want to give a $1.3 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest people in America? How are you going to pay for that?
Exactly.
Why doesn't that question get asked?
We talked about that. And, you know, because with the Democratic politicians, okay, they always talk about spending. Okay, so they propose, I guess, spending actual money on something, whether it be single payer, whether it's to transform our energy situation, whether it's some entitlement. I mean, like whatever it is, infrastructure, whatever it is. It's actually, I guess, it's new spending. So you're like, okay, how are you going to pay for that? But with Republicans, they don't really talk about spending money. They talk about cutting back what other people have to spend. The wealthy have to spend. So, look, I know CNN, I know these corporate outlets know the game. I know that they know it's going to cost the United States of America money, but it's not spending, right? So we don't have to ask that question. That's what they do, and they get away with it.
Yeah, man. My buddy, he watched it, and he got on me a little bit for not watching it. But it's just, I know the deal. Like, I've already seen the playing field line out. We talked about this last week, I believe. You know, you've got your three strong progressives, one of which is being slow rolled to the point of oblivion. You know, it's like, I know he's got nothing but good stuff to say. And you know what else I know that really pisses me off too? The American people really like what Bernie has to say. They really do. And and like CNN and Fox News, they always want to make it seem like it's pie in the sky. And it's not. You know what's pie in the sky? Pie in the sky is thinking that because we go with the Green New Deal, we're going to wreck the economy. I mean, it's so short-sighted. You know what's going to really wreck the economy? Not being able to grow fucking food. It's going to wreck the economy. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
That's interesting that you kind of brought that up, because when they kind of bellyache over the cost, the actual cost of not addressing things like climate change is going to be exponentially worse.
But they deny that.
You just mentioned kind of one cost that will occur if we don't address these things. You know what I'm saying? Not being able to grow crops. That costs everybody. That just doesn't cost industrial farmers or.
But see, they deny that on its face that it's actually going to happen though. That's how they get away with it. If they actually admitted that was likely to happen, then they couldn't run away from it. But they don't admit it whatsoever. Like, deny the science. That's not going to happen. See, it's cold.
It's cold.
Nothing's going to happen. It's cold.
I know. Look at the temperature in my house. It feels fine in my house. What are you talking about?
Oh man,
it's ridiculous. It's like people think that you're going to be able to have your cake and eat it too when it comes to the corporate media. You know, they want to act like they're down for the American people and they want to help the American people out, but they play this game, you know, with the whataboutism when it comes to the violence on the right, and, you know, allow you to make your own decision based on scientific fucking fact. You don't get an opinion on climate change, man. You know, like at first, okay, so maybe 10 years ago, maybe you had an opinion. Not really, but let's just say that you had an opinion 10 years ago. Now you really don't. I was on Reddit. Somebody told me that the state they lived in had a 120-degree swing in a 3-month period. That means they went from like 80 degrees one day to -40 or something. I mean, not in the same week, but, you know, within 3 months. Where do you see that on the planet? Now, Earth's weather is very volatile, but it's not that volatile. I mean, that's insane. You're talking about you had a summer-like day somewhere around the fall, maybe early winter. Then you had a -40 degree, and it's just so crazy. And I'm wondering what's going to happen when this really starts to hit during the growing season. Like, all this rain and shit? Rain is like, water's good for crops, but too much water washes out crops. And that's all we've been getting. The ground is super saturated with water where I live. Super saturated with water. You have storms almost every week now. And people are thinking it's okay. And, like, you know, nobody wants to give the progressives and the Democratic Party a chance because it's going to cost too much money, but they have no idea. They have no idea how much money it's going to cost when you really can't afford food.
Right.
You really just can't because it's so hard to grow the shit now. You have to get it underground. I mean, people don't understand the scope and the gravity of what it means for your climate to change. Not your weather, but your climate to change.
Yeah.
Like
Climate
the shit
is
you've
different than
been
weather.
dealing with for thousands of years all of a sudden is no longer reliable. The last time shit happened like that to humans was the Ice Age.
Right.
Fucking insane.
I remember, man, like, but we come from, well, not come from, but I mean, we're hailing from South Carolina right now, right? That's where we're broadcasting from. I wasn't always here. I grew up in New York, and then I came here in the early 90s. I remember in the early 90s what the weather was like, you know, what the climate was like. I remember what that felt like. Now, we're some 20 years later, 30 years later now, something like that, right? It's much different. It's much different. If you actually even took a look at the historical data from the early 90s to what we're feeling right now, it's totally, totally different. The belief that, like, nothing is happening or that it's just, like, a little bit of change and not actual monumental change, and that we won't continue seeing monumental change and all these negative types of instances happening with earthquakes and hurricanes and the ice caps melting. I mean, like, sea life dying. To think that, like, it's not happening when it actually is already happening, that's just something else. That's just not you being obtuse. That's like you are meaning to be that. You are willfully ignorant. And
yeah,
for a regular person to do that, I think it's even more offensive to me. If you're in the game, if you're a politician, or if you work for one of these fossil fuel companies, then I understand it. There's a money incentive. Like, you can admit it. I understand that. It's corruption and you're a detestable human being, but I understand that. But the people that have nothing to gain from it and that are willingly, like, promoting...
it's hateful. It's hateful. Really what it is just, it's hateful because it's a liberal cause. Mm-hmm. And even though it's a valid, scientifically confirmed, we validated this now. You can't deny climate change. Yeah. I'm sorry. You can talk about your beaches look the same or whatever the fuck you want to ramble on about in the chat. But at the end of the day, motherfuckers have hurricanes in Mississippi in the middle of fucking December. Tornadoes and shit outside of Tornado Alley, outside of season, regularly. This isn't flukes. This is regular. You have 100-year storms on the regular every year. Somewhere in this country, somebody experiences some kind of a 100-year storm.
Right.
On the regular, you have 100-year floods. On the regular, multiple times. You cannot sit there and say climate change doesn't exist. And you can't say that it wasn't humans that caused it. And you know why you can't say it wasn't humans that caused it? Because every other fucking animal on the planet didn't have an industrial revolution. Sorry. Just not how the shit works.
I agree, man. As always, Court, man, you coming with knowledge, man. Always providing some, I say, information, some entertainment too. I love when you go on a rage sometimes, we didn't see the rage so much tonight.
Yeah.
But I like when you get all up in it.
When he flips the table over?
Yeah, man.
When he flips.
Where you can actually have a vision of that. Man, I like those. I like those times, man.
But I guarantee you, whatever table he does flip over is not going to have the food he just cooked. He always calls it.
He's into the cooking.
You know what I'm saying? The food is not going to be on that table.
Oh, shit, fellas. Yeah, but I love talking to you guys, man. And, hey, thanks for letting me have an outlet. Thank you guys for keeping up on top of the shit, and coming on and taking your time to explain stuff. It's really important, and I'm glad we got people like you out there. I really am.
Man, one love out there, Court, man. Right. We appreciate you, man.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
All right, you too. We're going to get to the next caller now. We have 2 more callers in the queue, so we might limit this current call. So we're going to take call from what's the area code, Will?
It's 217. All right, 217, you're on the air live with LTMB.
All right, let me speaker. Hey, do y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, great. Thanks for having me on.
Right. Well, first of all, who's this and where are you calling from?
I'm here. Sorry, what?
What's your name and where are you calling from?
Oh, my name's Andrew. I'm from Champaign, Illinois.
Andrew, all right. Nice to hear from you. What you got for us tonight?
I'm curious. Have you guys seen the 538 poll that came out this morning regarding the voter picks as well as the second choice picks? And that's the point that I'm more concerned about.
No, I didn't see it. Did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
What did you? What kind of interpretation did you gather from that poll?
Well, what I've seen is that the plurality of Joe Biden voters, quote unquote, because obviously he hasn't run yet, but the plurality of them, I think it's about 28%, something like that, favor Sanders over any other candidate, which I thought was really interesting because honestly, I mean, he's a neoliberal centrist, so.
So are you saying Biden's voters favor Sanders rather than any other candidate? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So Biden voters, if Biden does not run, they favor Sanders over anybody else.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's surprising or not. Look, we know that Bernie Sanders is the front runner. I don't care what poll is trying to promote Biden or what. I think I saw something earlier today that said that most voters they would choose Biden. He has the most support, and then second was Senator Sanders. I can't imagine. I can't imagine that Biden would get that much love and support. We know that he has that connection to Barack Obama, but will it really carry over like he wants it to?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I mean, he's got the connection, but he doesn't have the charisma.
That's a good point. I think that they assume he'll have the charisma based on kind of the short snippets they've heard from him, and like how much.
Well, it's funny because he's always been the first one to drop out. Like,
yeah.
Why would anybody assume he's a leader when he's so willing to just drop out for political gain? I mean.
And what I hope too is that again we've talked about it at least 2 times on this show. If he does choose to get in the race, and everybody's speculating that he will, if he does choose to get in, he has handed everybody
the perfect ammunition.
And I'm talking about a big, fat, giant grenade, because just a few months ago during the midterms, he advocated for a Republican, and this was done in Michigan, and that Republican won his reelection.
Yeah, I know all about this.
I don't know how you come back from that. So.
I don't think you can. I mean.
For a payday. Too. Don't forget to add that in for a payday.
Sorry. That is very key information. For a payday. Not just because this was his friend, like he says, and he wanted to do the right thing, like he believed in him or whatever. Honestly, if he actually believed in him, you'd have to go to his voting record, like the guy's voting record. And you would learn that there is no way that this is even a moderate Republican. There's no way that Biden should have supported him. So what you would have to infer from that was the $200,000 he took from that.
That's where I think you're wrong. I think you would expect that because he's not even a centrist. I mean,
well,
in a way, he's the same that Hillary was, where he's right of center, where he doesn't even deserve the title of centrist, where he actually has any kind of appeal.
Yeah. The reason that I say that is because Biden, I mean, like you said, you can frame him, and you have good reason to do that, as a centrist or even more right of a centrist, right? Of a centrist Democrat. But the types of things that Biden has supported in his career, when you're talking about the ACA and,
oh, God, his criminal reform. Oh,
yeah, well, I'm on a host of positions, if you're talking about being pro-choice or just whatever, this guy that he advocated for is to the far right. I mean, this guy does, even Joe Manchin, it would be weird for Joe Manchin to stand up for that guy, and we know who Joe Manchin is. So that Biden did it is
I'll
man.
admit I'm not super informed about it. I know that he supported a Republican in one of the elections.
Yeah, this isn't like just like some moderate Republican that sometimes votes with Democrats.
I did not realize he was that far right.
Oh yes,
that's really
so he's far right, and Biden took money.
Right. So what would you have to infer from that? You can't say that his policies lined up with this guy's policies. You can't say that. Not even on the ACA. You have to infer that it's about the money.
At that point, it's like the best interpretation you can make is that he's completely bought off.
Exactly.
Because if that's not your interpretation, it's that he's genuinely racist. Like, what the fuck?
So in 2020, if he does actually get in, he would take the place of Hillary Clinton. All the corruption, that angle about money in politics, all of it would be focused on him.
You think corruption is the bad part? No, I'm more worried about the foreign intervention and the literal war that would occur.
What'd you say again?
I'm concerned about the foreign policy, but the literal war that would probably take place as a result is more of a concern to me.
What war are you talking about?
Yeah, what war are you talking about?
Hello?
What are you talking about? What war are you talking about?
Specifically, what do you mean by war?
Russia.
I don't know about that. I don't know if there's a legitimate energy being put forth by Democrats in regard to going to an actual war with Russia. Most, if not all, people who have kind of spoken out about this kind of, Russia deal, Russiagate, or any involvement Russia had with
I'm not talking about Russiagate. I'm talking about the. If anything, it's probably the opposite. It's the tensions that have resulted between us and Russia with Trump pulling out of a lot of the nuclear agreements.
Oh, nuclear proliferation agreements.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm not part of like the.
Oh, you're not. Okay, you are talking about like over some sort of.
No, I'm talking about like stuff that's actually relevant to my physical existence.
Well, what I meant by the money in politics, why I brought that up is because in 2016, there were only two candidates. There were Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And the money in politics angle, like the corruption, that was put on Hillary Clinton because of the speaking fees and her relationship with Wall Street and past decisions when she was in the State Department, things like that. In this race, since we have so many candidates that say they are not going to take corporate-backed donations, if Biden's in the race, we have a very recent example of corruption and money in politics. So that's why I say like all of that ammunition would be tossed his way. But we appreciate you calling in, Andrew, man. I don't think we've had you on the show before, so it's good that.
No, I'm actually a more recent follower. So
okay,
appreciate that, man.
Well, we hope that you call in again, man.
How'd you find us, bro?
I think I found you guys. I think I'm. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure I found you guys through Mikasa Sukasa. So.
Okay.
All right, man. Well, again,
I'll definitely call in some other time. It was. Yeah, I love talking to you guys. So, thanks for having me on. I'm sorry if I went over time. I probably did.
Nah, man, you're good. But we appreciate you calling in, man. Hope we hear from you again.
All right. Take care, man.
All right. So let's get to the next caller from the 484 area code.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. This is Howie B. from outside of Reading, Pennsylvania.
Howie B. What's going on tonight, Howie?
What's up? I just wanted to see what you guys' take was on how a lot of the other YouTube guys, the left leaning, seem to have turned on Bernie over the Venezuela tweets. And I'll hang up now because I want to go back to the chat too. Listen to you.
Okay. Well, okay, go ahead. Well, thanks for calling in. All right?
Yeah. Thanks for
calling in, Howie.
All right. Oh, so he wants us to give our analysis on other leftist YouTubers.
Mm-hmm. About the Venezuela tweets? Is that what
I guess in some ways I'm not going to overreact to it. I will express my disappointment for Bernie Sanders' kind of initial tweets, even though those tweets weren't as extreme as people were making it out to be. He wasn't calling for a coup or supporting it, but
hold on. I'm going to stop you right there. Because this is a modest approach. You didn't take such a modest approach on Twitter.
Twitter or Facebook.
Well, yeah, I think it was both. Right?
It was both.
This is a little modest right here.
Yo, I flipped over the tables. All right, okay, I did. Okay.
You did a little bit.
I did.
You did a little bit.
I flipped over the tables and threw items through the window
and
just stomped off.
Yeah.
Stomped in and stomped out.
Your heart rate decreased a little bit, right? It's been some weeks.
It's like, I did it, damn it. All right. But for real, like we had a problem with how people were portraying the tweets, Bernie Sanders tweets. They did it was a 3-part tweet, and it was clearly illustrated on the tweets. It was like 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3. What we saw some people sharing the one tweet. Only the one tweet. Now, if you want to criticize him based on all 3 of those tweets, that's fine. But we saw a lot of criticism based on those one tweets. We thought, I personally do think he was playing the middle. I think he should have been a little bit more, I guess, forthright. He should have been stronger in regard to, his disagreement with the Trump administration trying to pull this coup. But at best, you can describe it as probably to the left of center, his perspective. He just didn't want to provide Maduro with this kind of overwhelming, gleaning support. That's what it sounded like. He's like, there's problems in Venezuela that need to be addressed, but a coup is not necessary. What I think was missing was maybe a little bit of commentary on why some of that suffering was occurring, and that was due to the sanctions. So yes, Maduro's people, as they call it, are suffering. But when you're trying to recoup and get over other countries, such as the United States, fucking up your country, your people will suffer. I'm just kind of disappointed that he did not add that in there. I'm talking about America's role in destabilizing Venezuela to create the problems. That would have been a good addition. So I think it was lacking, but I don't think it was extreme as a lot of leftist YouTubers made it out to be. A lot of leftist commentators made it out to be like he supports the coup, and I'm like he didn't say that.
Yeah, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. I saw the vitriolic reactions of some of these popular YouTubers and these notable leftist type voices, and I just couldn't get down with it. The first tweet, in that thread, because you mentioned there were 3. The first one was pretty much condemning Maduro. It was like, there are problems, and I don't support Maduro, and this is the problems in Venezuela, and blah blah blah, it's bad, blah 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 blah. So if you only read that tweet and you deem it as a response to the coup, then that would lead you to a place where it's like, oh man, my God, so Bernie's on this too?
Yeah, I know.
But when you read the other 2 tweets, it's like, no, he's not with the coup. And even last night in the CNN town hall, he talked about Venezuela, and he made some very good comments about Venezuela as well. Again, he has stated that, things are not good there. He's for the humanitarian approach and this and that. But for the coup, no, I'm not for that at all, because we have a long track record of trying to overthrow democratically elected leaders, and look what that has led to. If you want a recent example, just look at Libya, right? And that happened under Democratic President Barack Obama. And so if you look at the situation now, it's chaotic. There's slavery there. I mean, there's all types of things going on there, right? And I remember when Barack Obama left office, or right before he was leaving office, he was interviewed, and I can't remember by who, but he said his biggest regret is like the one thing that he can point to as his biggest regret from his 8 years in office was not having a plan for after in Libya. So again, we have seen what our efforts have done across this globe when you're talking about interventionism and overthrowing these leaders. Bernie Sanders is not for that whatsoever. And I think he made that case very clear on Twitter. And I think he made that case very clear last night in the CNN town hall. I don't have any...
I understand where you're coming from. Cthulhu in the comment section, it says, playing the middle isn't populist, though. I don't necessarily think that he was playing the middle. That's like when I say he was left of center, that's actually not middle. Center is middle. I don't think I'm not so sure middle is a good way to characterize what he said. I think a better way to characterize what he said is a more nuanced position. And I'm fine with people criticizing the nuanced position. That's our point. Like, if you don't like Bernie playing the middle on this, or if you classify it as middle, or you're defining it as middle, fine. Criticize it from that position, which we're cool with. And I can offer more criticism as to why Bernie's response was lacking, but it will be directly related to all of his words in totality. So it's going to reflect what he actually said. So this is not about not criticizing Bernie, because I think we both kind of have our issues with what he said, but it takes everything he said into account. That's all we're saying. Take everything he said into account in your criticism. Don't just use one tweet and kind of draft your rebuttal and draft your, outrage from that one tweet, and don't really have context behind that outrage. That's all we're saying. It's just like if you have criticism, criticize everything for what he said or everything for what it was. That's all. That's all we're saying. I think, I don't know. I don't know what's going on here, man. There's certain leftists that are maybe on some other train. You know what I'm saying? And, they're trying to maybe find some fault in Bernie Sanders, and there is plenty of fault, in Bernie Sanders. But, I think pointing out certain faults within Bernie Sanders while ignoring the faults with somebody you are now ride or die for, that seems to be disingenuous. We've seen a lot of that too. We've seen a lot of ride or die Tulsi Gabbard people, and we ain't totally against Tulsi Gabbard now, but we just see a lot of ride or die people right now in regards to supporting Tulsi Gabbard who don't want to, I guess, address any criticism that's levied at her, like any legitimate criticism that's levied at her, but are now focused on Bernie Sanders and almost writing him off because of certain positions. And I'm like, you all find that damn Tulsi Gabbard is not some sort of choir girl either. You know what I'm saying? What you laughing for, dog?
It's just interesting that you did point out.
Again, we don't want to call people specifically, but we see a lot of that out there where it's like, don't ever criticize Tulsi Gabbard. You know what I'm saying? Like, what?
It seems but then they'll criticize. There is no reasonable criticism.
But there is reasonable criticism with Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
If there is reasonable criticism people have against Bernie Sanders, I don't care. That's
because I went over what I criticized from that CNN town hall.
Yeah, from CNN town hall. One thing I didn't like is his answer on the Russia shit. Like his answer about dealing with securing our elections and whatnot, and responding to the Russia question. Obviously, he couldn't control what questions came at him, but I didn't like the way he answered that. Because yes, we have to deal with cyber warfare from other countries, other superpowers like Russia. Yeah, that exists. But I wish he would have addressed some of the electoral irregularities and some of the hindrances that go on here that are domestically fomented.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Talk about securing elections. I wish he would have went on to that and not kind of kept it the topic on Russia. So that's one area I disagree with him on. And again, like, we can disagree with Bernie Sanders on a lot of areas, but don't like. I see it as kind of a disingenuous kind of path to go down when people say, "Don't criticize Tulsi Gabbard."
The point is, like, just be objective, man. If you have criticism, if there are legitimate criticisms of Bernie Sanders, then nobody should run from that. Because he's not without fault, no doubt. And we had criticisms of his 2016 campaign. We didn't think it was left enough. You know, we didn't think that he went after Hillary Clinton the way that he really should have. Yeah, he brought up money in politics. Yes, he talked about the Wall Street donations. He talked about the speaking fees. And look, he made it a real conversation, so much that in the debates, they were asked about these questions. Hillary Clinton was asked about these questions. But the criticism that I know I had was that he didn't significantly, like, put it on her. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't really wrap it right around her, you know? He could have done that in a more effective way. And then after he did concede and he was showing up for Hillary Clinton, there were some comments that he made that I didn't like whatsoever. We made some videos about them too. Talking about protest votes and this and that. And I mean, like, that, again, there are criticisms, legitimate criticisms of him. And Tulsi Gabbard, oh yeah, there's some legitimate criticisms of Tulsi Gabbard. Even after, and we did note that, or we did notice that she had an interview recently with Jordan Chariton. And we saw that interview, and some of the criticisms that we had of her were addressed on that interview. Now,
so not only was
I'm just saying, watching that interview and watching her actually confront the questions that anybody would have, I know that we would have of her, of these, you know, areas where we criticized her. Just for me personally, it didn't do a lot.
I wasn't really impressed with the answers, because obviously Jordan, being kind of the informed person that he is, knows exactly where the criticisms were coming from and kind of tailored his questions based on those criticisms. And so asked Tulsi directly, you know, about her stance on same-sex marriage, her stance on Syria, and what else? Her stance on torture. And those three answers I focused on because I was interested in seeing like her response to those issues, seeing if they were genuine. And not only was I not sold, they didn't even make sense. Again, if the rebuttal to these questions comes off a certain way, and the rebuttal to the questions like ends up not making sense based on how she responded and what she said, if those don't make sense, then how am I supposed to take her? You see what I'm saying? Even if she's good on those other issues, which I can definitely acknowledge, how am I supposed to take the answer she gave if they don't make sense? Like, to start out that interview, right? Like, you would think she was a conservative based on like how that interview started off. Because just like most interviews dealing with a presidential candidate or somebody running for office, the preliminary question is always, hey, why did you run? Like, what prompted you to run? What drives you? You know what she said drove her to run? You know what she said drove her to run? Or, sorry, drove her to serve in the military. Sorry. Drove her to serve the military, but serve her country. Because it was a general question about serving her country. I don't think it was just military specific. But she said 9/11. She said 9/11. 9/11 was kind of a driving factor in why she wanted to, I guess, serve her country. She said, I enlisted after 9/11 like so many Americans because I wanted to do something to serve and protect our country, especially after Al-Qaeda attacked us and killed thousands of Americans on that day. And following that, she says, each of us has a responsibility to carry out the vision upon which our country was founded. Now, does that sound like something a progressive would say, or somebody on the left. That sounds like something somebody on the right would say. Now, I don't know about you, but I know exactly how this, well, I don't want to say I know exactly. I know enough. I won't say I know exactly because that's saying like I know everything. But I have an idea of how this country was founded, in the vision at which the founding fathers wanted to kind of manifest. They wanted to manifest a certain vision. So it's just like how she opened up, to me, just rubbed me the wrong way eventually, because she was going to those typical like American exceptionalism, founding fathers kind of talking point. Like, to me, that just rubbed me the wrong way. You know what I'm saying?
It was a long interview, and we're not going to dissect it on this show. I mean, we're about to wrap this up, but just it is a good interview. I mean, it's good to hear her actually having to answer some of these criticisms that people have of her. So whether or not you take her explanation and you deem it valid or you deem it reasonable and you support her or not, I mean that's on you. But I think what Mike is trying to convey, that we still have significant criticisms of Tulsi Gabbard, and we're not saying that she's all bad. We're not saying that there's not several positions that we are right there along with her on. It's just that there are questions about her that remain.
I would definitely vote for her if she definitely won. Yeah, or if like Bernie had her as like some sort of an advisory position, or Bernie chose her for like vice president. I'd definitely vote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'll vote for her, man.
Yeah. Not throwing her away.
Yeah, hell no. Hell no, because she's so much better than a lot of the others. But
look, this is election season. Okay, this is 2019. She's a presidential candidate. We're doing what we should do with every single candidate and dissect them, pick them apart. If there's something that needs to be called attention to, then do it. If Bernie has a flaw, do it. And we just pointed to that at the beginning of the show too. Now we have much more praise for Bernie than we have criticisms, but we're not going to leave those criticisms to the wayside and not address them. No, there's some areas where he needs to clean up his campaign, clean up his messaging.
Right.
So
yeah.
But anyway, all right, we're gonna get out of here. We do want to thank our callers tonight, Andrew, Court, and Howie B. Thank you very much for calling in and adding to this program. Definitely want to highlight our contributors tonight on Super Chat, and that was Howie B. I believe the same person who called in. Thank you. Doubly thank you. Actually, triple thank you, because Howie B donated twice to the stream. So we appreciate that. Also, Jeremiah, who we've seen multiple times before. Love the show. Glad to see your popularity growing. We like that too, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise.
It's a surprise, and we hope more people join us, man. What's Kaladin?
If Kaladin is still watching the show, love to know how to pronounce that.
Yeah,
but that does look like Kaladin. That does
something. But anyway, she I don't even know if it's a she. Kaladin left a message saying, just recently started watching you guys and just wanted to say great show, very good analysis, and love the humor you both bring to the conversation.
Yeah, it's just like common sense guy talk, really. You know what I'm saying?
The humor is kind of unintentional.
Yeah, this is really like, we don't have like an expertise in like anything really. It's like economics, the environment. We don't have expertise.
We do have an expertise in one thing. Common sense.
Yeah, that's really all it is, man.
Common sense.
It's not really anything special. It's just kind of like evaluating things that come in our direction and I guess using a certain methodology that allows us to come to, an informed conclusion. That's all. It's not really nothing special. Well, we like someone in the chat did suggest that maybe we should get like somebody like environmental expert on.
Yeah.
But I don't think it should stop there.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
No, we should have many different guests.
Yeah, no doubt. Somebody like people who actually specialize in something.
I think where we do the best at, again, is common sense and objectivity. We have stated it since we began this platform that it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what organization that you are a part of. We're going to hold you accountable for your words and actions. So, it's a little bit easier for us, I would say, because we're not really affiliated with anybody. We are not affiliated with anybody else out there. Now, we do have some conversations with other YouTubers, no doubt, but affiliation, we do not.
Yeah, I know.
It is just LTMB, and that's it. We have no other affiliations. So if we do see something out there from somebody that you might think that we would support, and maybe we have supported in the past, if we have a criticism, we might voice that criticism. We've been known to voice some criticism. So.
Yeah, but we don't target people.
No, really. We don't target.
Occasionally, there's some. If
it's necessary, if we think it is necessary, if your mic is loud, and your audience is wide, and we think it's something disingenuous or something like that, then we might have something to say about it. Mm-hmm. But again, like you said, we don't really target anybody. But anyway, we hope everybody had a good time tonight. We hope that you learned something. We hope that we made you smile. Hope that we gave you some bits of information to take home with you and, ponder, think about. We hope that you join us for the next program also, which will be on Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Special shout out to all of our patrons on patreon.com who constantly fund LTMB.
Fund this broke broadcasters operation.
Hashtag broke broadcasters. Man, that's a hard thing to say.
Broke broadcasters. Broke broadcasters. That is like that is kind of like a
tongue twister. Man.
Busta Rhymes tongue twister.
Broke broadcasters.
Broke broadcasters. Broke broadcasters.
Yeah, man.
Because it's two BR words.
Yeah, man. It's difficult. But anyway, had a good time tonight. We will have. We got through everything that we want to talk about tonight, so that's a good thing. Sometimes we do, save things because we can't get to them, but we got through everything. So on Thursday it'll be a fresh round of topics.
We might have something to say about Trump's trip to Vietnam.
Maybe. I did read a little bit of analysis on there about the potential deal. I read a little bit about it. I'm not even getting into it.
Yeah, we're gonna get into
I'm not even getting into it. We might get into that. That is definitely one area we might.
Don't get into it now, but we will.
Yeah. On Thursday, we depending on what else is out there. But again, we appreciate everybody joining along and supporting us. If you haven't already, click that bell to get our content as soon as it drops, whether it be a video that we upload to YouTube, or if we do come on live, we want to make sure that you're noticing us and when we do drop some new content. So please be sure to do that. Again, we are looking for moderators because we feel it is definitely necessary. With the added audience comes the trolls.
Yeah, it's like 3 times as many people in here as there normally was.
Right. So best way to contact us, again, is letmadnessbegin@gmail.com. And if you want to send us a message, if you think that, you would like to be one of our moderators, just hit us up with a short email. Give us your screen name so that we know who you are, because we may not recognize your name or anything like that. But yeah, just let us know what your screen name is, and that we can count on you on each Tuesday and Thursday. So with that, that's all we got. All right.
Mm-hmm. Hope to see you on Thursday.
Appreciate everybody. We'll see you on Thursday. Let the madness begin. All right. Peace out.